Chapter 130, Enforcement Hall Grounds, Outer Disciples. How is that possible? They were at the Middle Chi condensation realm at 14 years old. John couldn't believe it. He figured they would at least be inner disciples, or maybe even core disciples, but the truth was far from that. Elder Ragger chuckled slightly. Like I said, only the most talented youths on the entire continent get to enter our sect. Hopefully, this will paint a good picture on how hard you have to work to succeed in this place. John nodded his head in agreement, but was still slightly dazed. This sect keeps surprising me, but the stronger it is, the better chance I have to get home. While thinking about home, John decided to ask Elder Ragger about Lee and Elliot some more. Elder Ragger, I met Lee and Elliot in my homeland, and they said they were on a sect mission, but said no more. How come they were able to get to my homeland if it is so far away and dangerous to get to? If Lee and Elliot were able to get to his homeland, maybe John would be able to return the same way. Elder Ragger sighed and shook his head slightly. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. The sect has its reasons for searching your homeland, and quite a large group of disciples were escorted by a heaven tribulation elder there, as he had some business to attend to as well. The only true safe way to make it across the Great Desert is to be escorted by a heaven tribulation cultivator, but getting their help is sometimes harder than crossing the Great Desert by yourself. Then, if they were on a mission, do missions often go to that land? Could I perhaps not join one of those missions? John asked hopefully. Elder Ragger shook his head once more. I'm afraid that the mission those two went on was quite special. Other than that, no other mission has visited those lands in decades, so I would not count on another mission popping up in the meantime. John was hopeful for a good response that left some room for him to get home, but it was quite the opposite. He thought about maybe telling the elder about the pocket realm as a bargaining chip to head back home, but his clan rules forbid the revealing of the pocket realm no matter the reason. If push comes to shove, I might have to reveal it, but in the meantime, I'll keep it a secret and try to find some other way home, or at least a way to send a message to my clan. John looked back towards Elder Roar and asked another question. So, without the help of a heaven tribulation elder, I can't cross the desert. Didn't you say that Meriden forging cultivators could cross? They can, but the road is still dangerous in that realm, so most choose to avoid it. Only heaven tribulation experts are truly safe in that place, Elder Ragger responded. John stopped asking questions and sunk deep into thought. So it seems that either I'll have to reach Meridian forging myself or get the help of a heaven tribulation elder. This might be harder to get back home than I thought. John and Elder Ragger continued to walk for some time, and the elder explained all the various buildings and their purposes. Many curious gazes of young sect members stared at John, as he was a newcomer and was being personally escorted by an elder. Eventually, the two of them made it to the enforcement hall grounds. Unlike the rest of the sect, which was white, gold, and blue, the enforcement hall sported darker colors, and the buildings were mostly black and dark red. The architecture style was also more foreboding, giving the enforcement hall grounds an eerie feeling. Elder Ragger noticed John's curious stares at the buildings and laughed slightly before explaining. The enforcement hall grounds are darker, and the architecture is more brutal as to install some fear in the disciples. If they were brought to a cheery place to be punished, do you think they would be scared? I suppose not, John replied. Come, I'll show you to your room. The enforcement hall grounds had dozens of buildings of various sizes and purposes. The largest of them was the judgment hall, which was where those who did wrong were brought to have their punishments decided, as well as imprisoned if necessary in the grounds below. The two of them walked into one of the smaller buildings, which was still several stories tall and several hundred yards wide. The elder brought John to a particular door and pushed it open. This is your room. You can stay here until the entrance exams start. I'll be back in a few days to hand out some duties for you, but in the meantime, make yourself at home. Just don't stray away from the enforcement hall grounds, as you're not a true disciple yet. John nodded his head and thank the elder for his help, before entering the room and closing the door. The room was several dozen yards wide and long, and was quite spacious by John's standards. It contained a bedroom, kitchen, as well as a meditation chamber. John entered the meditation chamber, which was quite spacious as well, and took in a deep breath of fresh air. The qi density in the air is slightly higher than normal around here. There must be some formation that gathers the qi here. John sat down and assumed a meditative position. He calmed his mind and cleared any excessive thoughts. It's been quite some time since I've last cultivated. With the pocket realm and everything afterwards, I haven't been able to cultivate in a few months. Considering the strength of the youths in this sect, and with the entrance exam in 3 months, I have some catching up to do. I think it's about time I enter the Qi condensation realm. Chapter 131, Qi condensation. John calmed his mind and eliminated all excess thoughts before he sent his mind into his soul space. In the soul space existed the primordial extermination, lightning cultivation technique that Celestial Soulrend had given him. As mentioned by Celestial Soulrend, there existed Danshan cultivation techniques that focused on a single aspect, boosting the cultivator's power in that aspect by a large amount. It acted similar to a variant body or attribute body, but was targeted to the Danshan itself. When cultivators drew qi from their Danshan out into their bodies for magical attacks, they would use their comprehension to convert the pure qi into the type of qi they were using to attack. In the mist creation realm, since cultivators were only just getting used to their qi, they would unleash unrefined qi out in attacks. While this method could release devastating attacks, it was still much weaker than refining the qi into the state most suited for that cultivator, and then unleashing it. Only in the qi condensation realm and above were cultivators adept enough in both their comprehensions and controlling their qi that they could refine it into specific attacks. For example, a cultivator adept in fire-based attacks could unleash pure qi from their Danshan for attacks, but by refining and amplifying the pure qi into fire qi, they could unleash attacks far stronger. This was due to their comprehensions being much higher for that specific nature of qi, as well as having profound battle arts to fully unleash the attacks. In John's case, in the future when he unleashed lightning attacks, he would convert the qi leaving his essence Danshan into lightning qi, and then unleash his lightning-based battle arts. However, cultivation techniques such as the primordial extermination lightning technique would allow John to unleash lightning qi completely naturally from his Danshan, and not take the slight amount of time required to convert it manually. Not only that, but the lightning would be of a higher grade as well, resulting in quicker and more powerful attacks. John sent his divine sense into the technique floating in his soul space, and came to these conclusions after perusing through the cultivation technique. How amazing! Not only is this cultivation technique amazing enough to last me all throughout my cultivation journey, it will also give me immense advantages in battle itself. I have a variant body, an attribute body, and now a Danshan that is similar to an attribute body. John studied the technique for many hours before he finally grasped it enough to start cultivating it. However, John was pleased to find that cultivating the primordial extermination lightning did not require actual lighting. Although it would help somewhat, it was not required. It seems as if lightning can speed up the process in some cases, but isn't required. In the meantime, I need to use my lightning comprehensions to refine pure qi into lightning qi, then infuse it into my Danshan in a very precise and specific manner. If I repeat this technique enough times, I'll slowly transform my Danshan, as well as advance to the qi condensation realm. But first, John's divine sense left his soul space, and his divine sense drifted into his palace realm. Whenever he sent his divine sense into his palace realm, John would find his divine sense transformed into a soul version of himself, which allowed him to walk around the palace freely. John walked into the palace and into the main hallway, where he found many items lying around. Everything he had collected thus far in his cultivation journey lay strewn around the main hallway, including beast corpses and barrels of blood essence. Such a mess. I need to figure out how to open one of the rooms in the side hallways to store this stuff. John walked past some of the items and stopped before the corpses of two young boys. He stared at the corpse of Dylan coldly, as he was suddenly reminded once more of the predicament his clan was in. They said they were from a power in the Holy Lands. I need to figure out which one. But in the meantime, I'll be borrowing your blood essence. John quickly drained the blood essences from both boys and stored them in a small barrel. Much like the regular blood essence that John used to replenish his chi reserves, John was able to cultivate with human blood essence without bringing it out of the palace realm. The palace realm seemed to have a unique connection with his body Danshin, making this all possible. At least this saves me a large headache of anyone potentially finding me using human blood essence. John prepared the blood essence and slowly started to infuse it into his body Danshin. His body Danshin was at the peak of the mist creation realm and only needed a slight nudge to advance to chi condensation. Unlike his essence Danshin, John's body Danshin did not require comprehensions to advance, only blood essence. I know that if my body Danshin's cultivation realm exceeds my essence Danshin cultivation by too much, I'll be overwhelmed by those mental assaults. Who knows what will happen in that case, but I can tell I won't have a good ending. I was able to maintain my mind by having my body Danshin be only one minor realm higher than my essence Danshin, but I wonder if that's true for a major realm as well. Although going from peak mist creation to early chi condensation was only one step up, it was advancing up a major realm. John was curious if he would be able to withstand such a disparity in his cultivations. Blood essence slowly started to infuse into his body Danshin, and John could feel his body Danshin at the verge of breaking through. However, just as John was about to push it over the edge and advance, the mental assault struck John's mind and soul with an intensity far greater than he had felt before. Gah! John cried out and hurriedly stopped infusing blood essence into his body Danshin. After some time, the mental assaults faded. John was still breathing heavily from the pain he had just felt. It seems I cannot have my body Danshin be a higher major realm than my essence Danshin. Then I'll just raise my essence cultivation first, and then my body cultivation. John spent some time clearing the mental anguish he had just felt from his mind, and once more focused on the primordial extermination lightning technique. After several hours more of studying, he finally started cultivating the technique. He followed the principles of chi movement throughout the body, and was surprised to find that many tiny chi whirlpools suddenly appeared all throughout his body, drawing the chi in the surrounding air faster into his body. How amazing! While John was unsure exactly how the technique accomplished this, he was only concerned in following it, not understanding it. Chi rapidly rushed into his body, at which point he focused on refining it into lightning chi. The lightning chi was then infused into the Danshin, sent out, and infused again in a continuous cycle. His face lit up in excitement as he felt his cultivation rapidly rise, as well as his essence Danshin ever so slightly begin to transform. He also consumed the golden marrow condensation pill, which greatly helped his cultivation speed. This process lasted for nearly a day, before finally, a muffled boom echoed out within his body, and a large smile broke out on his face. Finally, I'm in the chi condensation realm. Chapter 132, Lightning Essence. A large smile hung on John's face as he sent his divine sense into his essence Danshin to inspect it. A strong aura radiated from his essence Danshin, several times more powerful than when he was in the mist creation realm. As the name chi condensation suggested, the chi in his Danshin was now condensed into a liquid form, while it was misty and ethereal in the mist creation realm. He could feel a much greater control over his chi now. Not only is my Danshin more powerful now, it's also much larger in terms of chi reserves. John inspected his essence Danshin for quite some time, and started circulating his chi to get used to the new power. With a thought, small arcs of lightning started to dance along John's skin. After playing around with his new cultivation, John quickly noticed that his soul space had grown larger, and his divine sense more powerful. John was pleased to find that his nascent soul had also advanced to the soul essence realm. His divine sense now stretched several hundred yards, and his soul space was much larger. A larger soul space meant a stronger soul power, which improved things such as divine sense, memory, and comprehension speeds. I nearly forgot, unless one specifically focuses on soul cultivation. Essence cultivation and soul cultivation are closely linked. As long as my soul is powerful enough when I advance in essence cultivation, it will naturally advance as well. Improving my soul strength in front of the holy gate really is beneficial. Normally, cultivators would also have to focus on their soul and improve it in many different ways to have it keep up with their essence cultivation. Otherwise, if their soul was weak, a soul cultivator could eliminate them with a thought. However, all John had to do was mediate occasionally in front of the holy gate. Isn't this palace realm a bit too powerful? It's basically cheating for cultivation. John shook his head and once more focused on his soul space. Now that I have the primordial extermination lightning cultivation technique, I can freely control lightning, although I still need to learn some battle arts. There is that one thing Celestial Soulrend gave me, but I haven't had time to look at it until now. Let's see what it is. John sent his divine sense into his soul space to inspect the battle art. The technique floated in his soul space in an isolated area. As John's divine sense approached the floating ball of lightning, his face began to scrunch up before a look of fear appeared on his face. What the fuck? This isn't a technique. This is a condensed ball of pure lightning essence. If this thing exploded, it would shatter my soul and erase my mind. What the hell was that con artist thinking? John couldn't help but curse Celestial Soulrend for doing something so dangerous. Although the ball of lightning essence seemed stable enough for now, as it seemed to be contained by a mysterious soul power than Celestial Soulrend put in place, John didn't know if it would ever become unstable. If not for that layer of soul power, John would never be able to hold a ball of pure lightning essence into his soul space. Not only that, but his divine sense was far from strong enough to touch it at the moment, making him unable to move it at all. Why the hell did he do this? I just have a lightning bomb in my soul now. What good does that do? John had been expecting an amazing lightning battle art, and Celestial Soulrend had actually seemed pleased with his suggestion of Miko as a successor, at which point he gave John this lightning essence. Whatever, it seems stable enough for now, and I can't do anything about it for now anyways, so I'll just ignore it. Just as his mind was about to leave his soul space, John felt a slight tremble in another part of his soul space. Ahem. John sent his mind in the direction of the trembling and quickly discovered the source. You're awake now, huh? He quickly discovered the source of the trembling in his soul space was the egg that he had received in the lightning trial land. It had been in a slumber as soon as he obtained it, but it seemed as if it had awoken slightly now. John tried to send his divine sense into the egg to see what type of creature was inside, but his divine sense was unable to penetrate the egg. A frown appeared on his face, but he was unable to do anything about it. You called me over here, so what do you want? The egg trembled once more, and the image of the lightning essence ball appeared in John's mind. He thought about it for a moment before his eyes lit up. Do you want the lightning essence? John asked. The egg trembled rapidly once more, seemingly more excited than before. John thought about it for a moment and finally put all the pieces together. Celestial Soulrend clearly knew that I had obtained this egg, so he must know that it needs pure lightning essence or powerful lighting to grow. He also mentioned that the holy aura said I could only obtain one technique from him, so this was probably his way of getting around that, since the lighting essence technically isn't a technique. After figuring everything out, John felt less pissed off at Celestial Soulrend. Although he still would have preferred for a battle art, this was still something he could make use of. Fine, but be careful. If you trigger this ball of lightning essence, I'll die. And since you're in my soul space, you'll die as well, so don't do anything stupid. Although John was unable to directly communicate with the egg, their shared soul connection from the companion pact allowed him to somewhat understand its intentions. John used his divine sense to pick up the egg and carefully brought it over to where the ball of lightning essence was floating. The egg started to tremble rapidly in excitement, and John placed it directly next to the ball of lightning. His eyes widened in shock as the egg rapidly dashed into the ball of lightning. "What are you doing?" John shouted, but was too late to stop the egg. He braced his mind for the explosion, but was relieved to find that nothing happened. He slowly opened his eyes and stared at the ball of lightning, which now contained an egg inside. The egg seemed to be at home within the lightning. "Whatever, just don't make it explode," John commanded before his divine sense left his soul's space. "The less I think about the bomb inside my soul, the better." Although he said this, John was still slightly sweating in nervousness from the ordeal. He took quite some time to calm down and clear his mind. "Now, let's get my body dancing to the chi condensation realm as well." Chapter 133. Advancing again, John began to infuse the human blood essence from Dylan and the other boy into his body dancing, and followed the principles of the Immortal Asura body. Human blood essence flowed throughout his body, before eventually infusing into his body dancing. John could feel his body dancing grow in power, and before long, it was at the cusp of breaking through. Several minutes later, the blood essence was emptied, and a slight muffled sound echoed out in John's body. His eyes lit up in excitement. "The human blood essence I had was just barely enough to advance. Both my body dancing and essence dancing are now in the chi condensation realm." John quickly stood up and sent a punch out in front of him. The air rippled from the power of his punch. "My explosive body power is at least several times stronger than before." He was also pleased to find that the sinister murmurs were at a manageable level, unlike before when he tried to advance his body dancing to the chi condensation realm first. Although they still occasionally popped up and tried to overwhelm him, he had become experienced at keeping the murmurs in check. Meditating occasionally in front of the sinister gate played a great part in tempering his will and allowing him to resist the murmurs. His tempered will showed its strength in allowing him to withstand the lightning trial's pain, and once again showed its use. Without his strong will, John realized he would have not gotten nearly as far in his cultivation journey as he had so far. Just as he was thinking about this, John once again found himself suddenly appear within his palace realm. This time, instead of appearing outside the palace, he found himself standing directly in front of the holy gate. The translucent sphere hung high in the air, and the many drops of blood continued to revolve within. John found himself unable to move, but had become accustomed to this. Every time he advanced in a major realm, he would find himself in this scenario. As expected, one of the drops slowly began to descend. When it broke through the translucent barrier, the power emanating from the blood was much stronger than the drop previously. Just like last time, half the blood radiated a holy aura, while the other half was pure sinister evil. John watched as the blood slowly descended to him, before it quickly entered his body. Pain assaulted his body as the blood rapidly spread throughout his entire body, infusing into every inch of flesh, as well as his dancing. The sinister blood did its best to destroy his body, but the holy blood soon radiated its power, calming the sinister blood to a level that he could control. He felt the level of his immortal Asura body rise once more. The process continued for several minutes before it finally ended. After regaining his composure, John walked to the holy gate and touched one of the 8 massive chains chaining up the gate. As expected, the chain began to crumble before it shattered into nothingness. The holy aura radiating from the gate once more grew in strength, cleansing his soul and making him feel completely refreshed. John bathed in the aura for some time, before looking at the gate and calling out, "Hey, I know you're in there. Who are you, and what is this palace realm?" He wanted answers, or at least to have the entity respond back, but despite waiting there for a long time, no answers came back. John shook his head and moved on, heading towards the sinister room. A sinister aura assaulted John as he ventured into the room, but its strength was far below what was needed to overwhelm him. The strength of the aura wasn't even enough to temper his will anymore. John walked to the massive sinister gate and looked at the 9 chains still chaining the gate. After some hesitation, he reached out and touched one of the chains. Clank! The chain shattered, unleashing an aura much more powerful and sinister than before. Gah! John clutched his head in pain as the murmurs attempted to overwhelm his mind and soul. After a minute of bearing the assault, he could withstand it no more. He quickly left the palace realm and found himself breathing heavily back in his enforcement hall room. The murmurs took several minutes to fade, and he once again composed himself. John punched the air once more, feeling yet another increase in his body strength. A large smile broke out on his face before he quickly thought of something. The Immortal Asura body book. Let's see if anything has changed since last time I looked at it. The last time John advanced, the Immortal Asura body allowed him to look at the first page, which depicted how to cultivate the technique. However, despite there being more pages in the book, John was unable to turn to any of those pages, frustrating him greatly. Everything in the palace realm seems to advance with a major cultivation increase. Let's see if the Immortal Asura book did as well. In the majestic main palace of the Heavenly Lighting Sect, the sect leader continued to sit on his throne and read various documents. Powerful lightning snaked out from the throne and all over his body, but he acted as if he didn't notice it. All of a sudden, the sect leader's gaze shifted upwards, and it appeared as if he was staring through the very walls of the palace and into the sky. His figure quickly disappeared without anyone's notice, and he soon appeared high in the sky above the sect. Tribulation clouds. Is an elder advancing? The sect leader watched as the clouds high above the sect slowly began to gather and turn gray. Lightning began to build up within the clouds, and the center of the tempest seemed to be directly above the enforcement hall grounds. Just as soon as the clouds gathered, they dispersed, returning the sky above the sect to normal as if nothing had happened. His gaze pierced dozens of miles directly to the enforcement halls, and searched around for a moment before a small smile appeared on his face. Interesting. Chapter 134, Second Stage of the Immortal Asura Body. A black bound book appeared in John's hands. He opened the book to the first page and was greeted with the familiar diagram that helped him start his Immortal Asura Body journey. It seems like it was so long ago, but it was less than a year. So much has happened recently. He reminisced for a short while regarding his cultivation journey so far. Less than a year ago, he was unable to cultivate at all. However, his destiny changed when he found the mysterious sphere, which turned out to be a body dantian. After that, he fought with bandits, robbed a duke, fended off assassins, won a tournament, entered a pocket realm, and more. John felt as if last year was a dream. He quickly snapped out of his reminiscing trance. There's time in the future for reminiscing. Right now, I need to focus on raising my strength. John once more turned his attention to the book and reached out to turn the page. Last time when he tried to open the book past the first page, he was unable to. John didn't know if his theory was right, but he was hopeful that he would be able to find out more about the Immortal Asura body after advancing to the chi condensation realm. His fingertips brushed the side of the second page, and much to his delight, John found he was able to turn to the second page. It worked. John laughed in joy as he turned to the second page. Unlike the first page, which just depicted diagrams, the second page contained both writing and diagrams and was much more detailed than the first page. Let's see, it has 2 parts. Let's start with the first. The page was broken down into 2 sections. Both sections had written descriptions as well as diagrams depicting the internal structure of the body, including meridians, nerves, and muscles. John turned to the first words and started reading them. All bodies contain natural limiters, which are placed by the heavens themselves. These limiters protect every person from their own natural potential. These limits include blocked meridians pathways, deadened nerves, and unactivated muscles. However, by cultivating the body, one is able to unlock these limiters. There are many limiters, and one can be unlocked in each major realm. The first limiter is the limit of speed. The wording stopped, and John glanced down to the anatomical diagram of a human body below. Just like the first time he looked at the book, the diagram seemed to draw him in, and John could soon see the various muscles, nerves, and meridian pathways that were focused on the limit of speed, and were mainly located in his legs. I need to first use my body chi to forcefully clear these blocked meridian pathways. Once that's done, I need to use the new circulation pathways of chi to activate the deadened nerves and unactivated muscles that existed in those blocked regions. John studied the diagram for several hours before he finally felt confident enough to follow it perfectly. He calmed his mind and took a deep breath before sending out a powerful burst of body chi out from his danshin and into his meridian pathways. The chi flowed to the blocked meridian channels and crashed against the obstructions, but it was only able to clear the obstructions slightly. That wasn't enough, again. John continuously sent out powerful bursts of body chi to the obstructed meridians, and soon his meridian pathways felt like they were about to explode from how much powerful chi was flowing through them. Normally, body chi would be sent to his muscles, bones, and other parts of his body during fighting to be used outwards. But right now John was sending all that chi to explode against the obstructions within his meridians instead. Not only was this process painful, but it was also dangerous. If he used too much power and caused his meridians to shatter, he would become a cripple. Delicate balance was required, and John could see why only body cultivators could achieve this. Without my strengthened body, sending this much chi to crash against the obstructions would have caused my body to explode from within. John clenched his teeth in pain as the power continued to flow throughout his body, but didn't stop the process. After several painful hours of repeating this process, John finally cleared the first blocked meridian pathway. John breathed out heavily and caught his breath. He restored his body chi using some of the blood essence reserves before once more starting the clearing process. The meridian clearing process continued for nearly a day before John finally broke through the last obstructed meridian pathway. What John didn't know was that without powerful enough body chi, some cultivators were never able to clear these obstructions and were forever stuck at this stage. Some exploded from within during the process, and some were too scared to even attempt it. John rested for some time before testing out the results of his progress. Powerful body chi was sent to his blocked meridians, and John found that the chi was instantly absorbed by the nearby nerves and muscles. These nerves and muscles had been starved of body chi and had become useless, but they now began to brim with the same power as the rest of his body. Amazing. John hadn't even been aware of these nerves and muscles before that were now greedily absorbing his body chi and rapidly growing in strength. Not only are my starved muscles growing in strength, but the body chi in my legs now flows much smoother, resulting in me being able to unleash much greater power than before. John channeled body chi into his legs once more and was amazed at the results. However, the new meridian channels also added an extra burden on his body, once more making John realize why only body cultivators were able to unlock these limits. Unfortunately, this room is too small to test out my true speed. I'll have to go outside once I'm done to truly see how much I've improved. There's a second part to this page. I should study that first before I leave. John turned his eyes down to the page again and started reading the description. His eyes began to widen slightly as he continued to read the descriptions of the page and the diagram below. This second part is the true essence of the Immortal Asura body. John started to study the second part of the diagram and spent quite some time becoming accustomed with the new way to cultivate the Immortal Asura body. My human blood essence reserves are low, so I can't really cultivate the Immortal Asura body right now. I should focus on the battle aspect it mentions. Up to now, the Immortal Asura body had been a body cultivation technique alone, and John had blindly used his body and body chi to empower his attacks before he learned the supreme battle art. However, this page revealed to John that the Immortal Asura body was not just a body cultivation technique, but also a body transformation battle art. John was overjoyed, as he would be able to further augment his body with the body transformation art, and then utilize its great power with the supreme battle art to achieve his maximum power state. John began to follow the principles of the Immortal Asura body's transformation art and felt his body begin to slightly transform. Power began to well up inside his body, and John had never felt as powerful as he did at this moment. Amazing. And this is just the beginning of the transformation technique, as I'm sure there are more stages. However, John was surprised to find that the rate of body chi consumption to power this technique was immense, and his body Danshin chi reserves were quickly drying up. This consumption rate is at least 10 times greater than when I used the supreme battle art. Just as John was thinking about this, Elder Ragger quickly opened the door to his meditation chamber in a hurry. "John, are you all right?" Elder Ragger's words quickly cut off as he stared directly at John. Two blood-red eyes stared back at him. Chapter 135. Mysterious figure Elder Ragger stared at John's blood-red eyes in stunned silence. He had noticed that John had been cultivating the past few days, and so had given him some time to do so. But all of a sudden, a completely unfamiliar and terrible aura radiated out of John's room. Elder Ragger had rushed in to see if there was an intruder, but was stunned to see John sitting there in peace cultivating. The terrifying aura radiated from John himself. Elder Ragger felt like he was in the presence of a demon, and John's blood-red eyes seemed to look at him as if he was unworthy of existing before him. Although the aura John radiated wasn't nearly strong enough to affect or scare the elder, the profundity of it alarmed him. "Elder Ragger, what brings you here in such a rush?" The color in John's eyes started to fade, and his eyes once more appeared back to normal. Elder Ragger stood there in silence for a short while, trying to comprehend what just happened. "I came in here because I felt a different aura other than your own. What happened to you just now?" The elder had several suspicions and needed to confirm which one was correct. This was far too important a matter to leave alone. It seems that the Immortal Asura body transformation art is causing him some concern. How should I alleviate those concerns? John thought for a moment before responding back to the elder. "Elder, as I mentioned to the sect leader before, I have an innate variant body. This body transformation of mine is one of the powers it contains." John didn't want to mention anything about a body transformation art for two reasons. The first was that arts could potentially be used by others, which would incite greed if they thought the art was worth the trouble of stealing or killing for. The second was that it would raise questions as to where he obtained such an amazing body transformation art. By saying he naturally had this ability, although there still may be suspicions, no one could prove otherwise. While this could still cause headaches, John's body transformation art was out in the open now, so he couldn't deny its existence. Although it had only affected his eyes and aura, someone as knowledgeable as Elder Ragger would know roughly what had happened. "Is that so? Stay here for a moment. I need to follow up on something, at which point I will come back for you and show you around the sect." John nodded his head and watched Elder Ragger leave the room before returning to cultivating. "It seems like this art may have caused me some trouble, but I'm far too weak to escape or do anything about it right now. I'll just continue to focus on cultivation for now." In the main palace of the Heavenly Lightning Sect, Elder Ragger quickly strode through the extensive network of hallways before reaching the main chamber where the sect leader sat, still reading various documents. Elder Ragger walked through the massive chamber and stopped directly in front of the throne. His head bowed down slightly as he spoke. "Sect leader, I have some news to report regarding John." The sect leader looked up from his documents and gazed as Elder Ragger with a slight smile on his face. "He's quite full of surprises, is he not?" stated the sect leader in an amused tone. Elder Ragger's eyes widened slightly in surprise, but they quickly returned to normal. "Nothing can escape your notice, it seems. Yes, he is full of surprises, which is why I'm here. It seems John's variant body has some. Elder Ragger paused for a moment to find the right word to describe what he had felt. Demonic properties, if I was to describe it accurately. Although I can't be fully sure as it was just a fledgling aura. Only time will tell what exactly happened. The sect leader stared at Elder Ragger for a moment before a smile broke out on his face. I know what you're thinking. Maybe he's a spy. However, you don't have to worry about him. I sent a sound transmission to Elder Mabel earlier the day John arrived to check out his story. She did some research and confirmed it to be true. It appears the Fenix clan has lost a young master named John recently, although they didn't say how. Regardless, we do not have to worry about him. Just keep an eye on him in the meantime. Elder Ragger heaved a sigh of relief and nodded his head. It will be done. Several days ago, the moon hung high in the sky over the Fenix clan, and an all-hands meeting of the clan's elders were gathered in the clan's forbidden hall. Cade Fenix stood at the forefront addressing the group, and a shadowed figure sat behind him, his features obscured in darkness. Loud back-and-forth arguments were being carried out by many of the elders present. Cade Fenix raised his hands and silenced the group of elders. Regardless of the reasons, our investigations have concluded that the Crimson Valley sect truly is preparing to do something in the near future. We must prepare for war just in case it comes to that. Many heated discussions broke out once more, filling the hall with clamorous arguments. Cade Fenix was just about to call for silence once more, when all of a sudden, every elder present felt a chill crawl up their spine. Silence immediately descended on the room, and everyone soon noticed a shadowed figure standing in the corner of the room, their features obscured. Shock covered the faces of all those present, as no one had seen how this person had entered the room without any of their notices. Although the aura of the person was retraced, making them appear like a mortal, every elder knew that this person's power was beyond anything they had felt before. Only the shadowed figure sitting behind Cade Fenix was mostly undisturbed by the newcomer's presence. The hall remained silent for a moment before the mysterious figure spoke up. A feminine voice soon filled the room, but it contained a power that no one dared to look down upon. I am here to inquire if this clan has a young master named John Fenix. If so, describe his features. Surprise covered the face of every elder upon hearing John's name brought up. It was still a very sore spot for the clan, as they had lost their most promising young junior in the Pocket Realm. No elder dared to speak up, and so the shadowed figure behind Cade spoke up instead. We do, or did have a John Fenix. He was 15 years old with long black hair and a strong variant body. He used a scythe as a weapon. However, he recently died, so I'm afraid you've come here in vain. Although no one knew why the mysterious person was here, they could obviously tell it had something to do with John, although they had no clue how that was possible. The elders all stared at the shadowed figure, which immediately vanished from their sight without them noticing how. A single fatting sentence from the feminine voice soon filled the silent room, shocking every elder to their core. John Fenix still lives. Chapter 136, Discussions and Doubts. As one of the elders of the Fenix clan, Barden Fenix sat there in a stupor. He had been completely dead inside ever since John had perished within the Pocket Realm, and the words that just filled the hall seemed like a dream. Silence filled the Fenix clan's assembly hall for a short time before the room exploded in an uproar. How is this possible? One elder asked loudly. Just who was that woman, and how do we know she was telling the truth? True, she could be a spy or have some other sort of objective. John was not transported out of the Pocket Realm with everyone else. How could he possibly be alive? Many opinions regarding what just happened were spoken out loudly. Many elders questioned whether the information was believable. Silence. A soft but powerful voice filled the hall, causing every elder to stop speaking. The elders all looked towards the shadowed figure sitting behind Cade Fenix. The figure stood up and stepped into the light, revealing his features to all in the hall. He was quite elderly, with a long gray beard and white hair. His body radiated a powerful aura. That woman was not a spy. If she wanted to, she could have killed us all here without us being able to resist. Every elder was shocked to hear these words, but when they thought back to the mysterious person, they began to believe that woman's words. Patriarch, just who was that woman? One elder asked. I have no idea, as she blocked my divine sense from inspecting her. Only those in the heaven tribulation realm are able to do so, the patriarch responded. Heaven tribulation realm, many elders exclaimed in shock. How is that possible? The peak powers of this region only have meridian forging experts. The only place that has heaven tribulation experts is the elder's words trailed off as he thought of a frightening possibility. You are correct. The only place with heaven tribulation experts is the Holy Lands, the patriarch affirmed. The patriarch's words once again stunned the elders. They very rarely heard mentions of heaven tribulation experts from the Holy Lands, let alone meet them face to face. Although the Fenix clan was a peak power in the surrounding thousands of miles, they knew they were no match for the mighty cultivators from the Holy Lands. Clamorous uproar once again filled the hall as the elders began to discuss this news, before the patriarch silenced them once more. As I was saying, her powers are something we cannot match, and if she came here with ill intentions, we would not be alive right now. That can only mean that her words are true. John still lives. Barden's eyes began to fill with tears as he listened to the patriarch, his grandfather, utter these words. He would not have believed it had it come from anyone else's mouth, but Barden knew his grandfather had worldly experience and would not speak of things such as this unless he was certain. John's alive, Barden cried out with a loud yell, venting his emotions that had welled up inside him. The nearby elders congratulated Barden for the great news. Cade's eyes also became slightly reddened at the news of his grandson's survival. After some time of celebration, the patriarch once again silenced the hall. This news most likely means that John is in the Holy Lands, and that someone of importance has taken notice of him. Otherwise, they would not waste their time inquiring about him here. Patriarch, one elder called out, how can he possibly be in the Holy Lands? The last news we had of him was that he fell in the pocket realm. The patriarch shook his head and responded, I'm not entirely sure, but the evidence leads to the fact that John is in the Holy Lands. The pocket realm is a mysterious place beyond our understanding, and so such a thing cannot be ruled out. This is a great thing for now, as his cultivation should soar in those lands, so long as he does not perish. The elders began to once again discuss this news, with various emotions and doubts displayed. The patriarch paused for a moment before turning to his grandson, Yuan Fenix, the father of Parker. Yuan, your son gave us an account of how he saw John fall down a chasm to his death, yet John still lives. While Parker's story is not proven false by John being alive, as he could have somehow survived such a fall, I still must ask you, how loyal is your son to our Fenix clan? Yuan Fenix blanched slightly at what the patriarch was suggesting. He wanted to know if there was a possibility that Parker could have betrayed them and lied about his fate, or worse. Grandfather, I can assure you that my son Parker is 100% loyal. He would die for our clan if need be. I have never once questioned his loyalty to our clan, Yuan stated resolutely. He had to convince his grandfather that his son was loyal, as he was sure that his son would never betray them. The patriarch remained silent for some time, filling all the elders with unease. His voice once more filled the hall, alleviating Yuan's fears. I believe your son is loyal as well. Everyone may leave, I have much to think about. And one more thing, none of this information is to be told to anyone, even within the clan. Am I understood? The elders all nodded their heads in understanding, and the patriarch waved his hand in dismissal. The elders all bowed their heads before leaving, and before long, only clan leader Cade and the patriarch remained. Cade turned to the patriarch. What do you think, father? The patriarch thought for a moment before replying. It is great news that John is alive, and he seems to have found some powerful people who are interested in his identity. I'm sure we'll hear from him before long. You may leave as well. Cade Fenix nodded his head and began to stride out of the room. One last thing. The patriarch spoke out as Cade was about to leave the room. Yes, father. While I have no grounds to suspect anything, something doesn't sit right with me. From now on, keep Parker under close watch and report to me if anything suspicious occurs. Cade Fenix narrowed his eyes at what his father was insinuating. It will be done. Back in the heavenly lightning sect, John sat in his meditation room, contemplating on what to do next. He had expected Elder Ragger to return promptly, but it had been some time yet the Elder had not returned. This Immortal Asura transformation art is amazing. Unlike battle arts, which can only be used one at a time, this transformation art can used on top of the supreme battle art, increasing my power further. Although I'm sure the burden on my body is going to be immense. Battle arts use chi to empower attacks, and the supreme battle art was no different. John would send chi throughout his body in accordance with the battle art, allowing his body to unleash devastatingly powerful attacks. Battle arts could only be used one at a time, since the chi used for two different battle arts used at the same time would clash, resulting in them canceling out and potentially causing internal harm. However, body transformation arts were different. Body transformation arts were transformations with the body itself, which absorbed chi passively, instead of being actively used in attacks. As such, battle arts and body transformation arts could be used at the same time, resulting in devastating power. The only two drawbacks were that body transformations could only occur in bodies born with the natural ability to do so, as well as the immense burden transformations put on a body. Additionally, cultivators with ancient beast bloodlines could also transform if their talent was high enough, increasing their strength greatly. John was initially surprised that the Immortal Asura body allowed him to transform, but his surprise quickly faded as he realized the cultivation technique contained more secrets than he could possibly imagine. So far, my body transformation is minimal, but it might get stronger and more apparent the stronger I get. In the meantime, what should I do now that I've exhausted my blood essence reserves? John's thoughts filtered through his various inheritances before his eyes lit up. That's right. Now that I am in the chi condensation realm, I can begin to train that essence battle art. An ancient page made of some sort of animal hide appeared in his hands. John's eyes glanced over the ancient language at the top of the page. Divine Reaping Scythe, Chapter 137, Unleashing the Divine Reaping Scythe, Severing All Creation, Reaping All Divines. John had read these words before, which appeared at the very top of the page, but was still mesmerized by its grand boldness. I don't know what a divine is, but claiming to sever all creation sure is a big claim to make. John's mind felt enraptured by these words, and he read them several times over before glancing down to the next section of the page. He had read this page before when he was in the Dreadle Kingdom, but had come to the conclusion that he was too weak to study it back then. Now that he was in the chi condensation realm, John wanted to see if he could start using the battle art. He knew the immensely powerful supreme battle art for his body cultivation, but had no grand essence attacks. The Myriad Annihilation Scythe had been a good technique to use in the Mist Creation realm, but now that I'm in the Chi Condensation realm, I'll need a new powerful ranged attack. He continued to study the page. This page describes how the creator saw the essence of the scythe, and it uses those comprehensions to unleash a powerful battle art. However, this page only contains the first 3 steps, or stages of the technique, and the rest is incomplete. But that should be more than enough for now. John continued to read the familiar page, and his fingers traced each word as he read. He fell into a trance, and before he knew it, several hours had passed. Each step describes incredibly complex meridian and acupoint pathways for my chi. I first need to use my comprehensions to convert my essence chi into scythe chi, at which point I follow the pathways throughout my body to unleash the technique. From what I can tell, the technique focuses on sharpness and speed, as the creator saw the scythe as the ultimate life-reaping weapon. He slowly, but surely felt his scythe comprehensions improve as he studied the page for many hours. Qi contained the myriad of universal laws within them, and cultivators had to use their comprehensions to isolate and refine the specific qi they were looking for, at which point they would use that qi in attacks. The more refined and pure the isolated qi was, the more powerful the attacks would be. With the many days of studying the technique in the Dreidel Kingdom, as well as today, John felt that his scythe comprehensions and understanding of the technique had reached a level that he could attempt to use the first attack. I can't unleash this technique indoors. Since Elder Ragger isn't back yet, I should head outside and look for a place to train this technique. He said as long as I stayed within the enforcement hall grounds, I should be fine. John stood up and stretched his aching legs, as he had been sitting for many hours. He walked out of his room, before quickly leaving the building as well. The dozens of enforcement hall buildings stretched into the distance, and John walked until he found a wide open expanse of land between the buildings to practice his technique. Although many elder and disciples were seen walking about in the distance, this particular area seemed to be devoid of foot traffic, making it a good place to practice. This spot should do nicely. A pitch-black scythe appeared in John's hands, and he calmed his mind as he thought about unleashing the technique. Essence Qi began to build up within his Danshin, and John did his best to isolate and refine it into scythe Qi. He focused on this process for several hours, making sure to isolate and refine pure enough scythe Qi before attempting the technique. This technique has a very pure scythe Qi requirement to even attempt to unleash, otherwise it will fail and potentially harm me. Many people of the enforcement halls had walked by, and had noticed the unknown newcomer stand there in complete silence for several hours. Since he had not made any external attacks yet, the disciples of the sect who had walked by had no idea what he was doing. A small group of 3 male and 2 female disciples had stopped for a moment to watch what John was doing. They appeared to be around John's age and wore the signature gray robes of the enforcement hall. They had walked by earlier in the day and noticed him standing there, but had paid him no mind. However, they had just walked by him again and noticed he was standing in the exact same spot. "Look at this kid. He's been standing there for nearly half a day and hasn't moved a single muscle," one of the male disciples commented. "Maybe he's slow in the head, although he does seem quite interesting for some reason," one of the female disciples commented as she chuckled slightly. She had long brown hair tied up into a ponytail and was quite attractive. Her thin nose was raised slightly in the air, as if he was used to looking down on others. One of the male disciples frowned for a moment before speaking up as well. "You're right, he's probably slow in the head given that he's only in the early Qi condensation realm despite being our age. I'll go help him." The 2 other male disciples rolled their eyes at the words they heard. They knew exactly of the scene to come, as they had seen it many times before. One of the boys turned to the girl that had just spoken and spoke to her in a slightly annoyed tone. "You just had to mention that he was interesting, huh? You know how Roy feels about you, and what he does when you show interest in other boys." The girl feigned ignorance at the boy's words. Her eyes turned back to the scene of Roy approaching the newcomer, and a slight smile appeared on her face. John's eyes were still closed as he focused on refining his Qi into a scythe Qi pure enough to unleash the technique. He had been completing this process internally for many hours. Now, his eyes quickly opened in delight, and John quickly raised his scythe before slashing it down with all his might. An incredibly sharp black and red scythe Qi gathered on his scythe's blade for a moment before flying outwards extremely quickly. A sharp sound pierced the ears of all those nearby, and many of the nearby juniors felt their bodies tremble slightly as they stared at the Qi attack. John's face lit up in delight as he watched the attack fly out rapidly. It was even sharper and faster than he imagined, and he was overjoyed with the result of his first attempt. However, his delight quickly turned to shock as he watched the attack fly head on towards a boy walking directly towards him. "Watch out," John called out loudly. He had been so focused in refining Qi and unleashing the attack that he had failed to observe his surroundings. He had chosen this spot for how isolated it was, and no one had approached him all day, so John assumed it would be safe to unleash an attack as such. Roy had been casually approaching John when all of a sudden an attack was heading straight towards him. He was surprised that the newcomer would suddenly attack out at him, but was unconcerned given the weaker cultivation of the boy. However, Roy's eyes quickly became grim as he noticed the attack made him feel a slight sense of danger, which completely shocked him. Slice. Roy quickly unleashed a profound movement technique and just barely managed to dodge the attack, which grazed his robe and sliced off a small section on his sleeve. The chi attack sailed downwards into the ground below and quickly burrowed into the ground. Both Roy and John stared in shock at the attack that cleanly cleaved an extremely thin but deep line into the earth for nearly 100 yards before it finally dissipated. Roy breathed out a sigh of relief before turning to John and staring at him with cold eyes. "You dare to attack me? If I don't break a few bones in your body, you'll be getting off lightly." Chapter 138, Desire to Test Strength. John narrowed his eyes as he listened to the words the boy spoke to him. His breathing was heavier than normal, having just unleashed the divine reaping scythe. The attack had required far more essence chi than he had expected. "That attack was clearly not intended for you, so why are you making such a fuss about it?" John responded in a curt tone. Clearly, this boy had not approached with good intentions from the start, and was using this opportunity to make things difficult for John. He could tell that this boy was around his age, but had a cultivation at the late chi condensation realm. However, John was not too concerned about this. In fact, if the boy really wanted to fight, John would fully welcome it. He had recently increased his strength massively by both advancing in cultivation and battle art prowess. Although he had never fought two minors' realms above his own, he was willing to put it to the test. John had also not had a battle for quite some time, and was itching to test out his new strength. He had always been a battle fiend, and he could tell that his desire for battle had increased even further once he successfully cultivated the Immortal Asura transformation art. In fact, there seemed to be a lingering hot-bloodedness that came from his previous transformation, making him hope for a battle. Roy looked at John as if he was a fish on the chopping block. He had wanted to take him down a notch earlier, but John's complete lack of fear irked him even further. "You aren't even wearing disciple robes, so you're clearly just a worker. And yet you have the gall to speak to me like this." Roy laughed slightly before his tone became even colder. "If you beg for forgiveness, I'll let you off. Otherwise, don't blame me for being heavy-handed." John stared at Roy directly with indifference. He had done nothing to provoke this boy, and his attack towards him had been an accident, but he still acted like this. Many of the disciples that had been walking about stopped to watch the event, with some looking on in amusement while others had looks of concern on their face. Clearly, there are bad apples in this sect as well. It may not be as harmonious of a sect as I imagined, but I'll only find out after I join it. In regards to this fellow, however, it seems words won't solve anything. John didn't want to start a fight before he even became a disciple, but he wasn't about to let himself be trampled over either. "If you want to fight, then let's fight." Boom. A powerful aura suddenly exploded outwards from John, stunning Roy and the nearby group of disciples that had stopped to watch the show to come. Many had expected him to sheepishly back down and apologize, due the power and status difference. John pressed off the ground to lunge forward, when suddenly a hand pressed down on his shoulder. The hand felt as heavy as a mountain to John, and he was unable to move at all, even with his powerful body. John turned his head to look at the new intruder on his battle, and his aura quickly faded. "I leave you alone for less than a day, and you're already getting into fights," Elder Ragger stated while shaking his head, although his amused expression revealed that he wasn't mad. "He wanted to fight, so I was going to fight. It's as simple as that," John responded nonchalantly. He would not take blame for this incident. Elder Ragger struggled to keep a straight face, but eventually managed to do so. He had no idea just how daring John was, but the fact that he was willing to fight someone 2 minor realms higher than him revealed his guts. Elder Ragger nodded his head in approval. "You've got the right attitude for a cultivator, but unfortunately I can't allow this fight to happen on Enforcement Hall grounds." Elder Ragger turned to Roy, who was standing there in silenced fear. He had not expected an elder to come to the defense of this boy, and knew he was about to land into a world of trouble. "Roy, I just so happened to witness this whole ordeal. You should be setting a better example as a disciple of the sect. Go to the enforcement wall and stare at it for 3 days." Roy blanched at Elder Ragger's words and wanted to argue, but the elder's expression made him realize there was no getting out of this. His eyes locked to the nearby John, and John could feel great hostility from Roy. "Clearly this isn't over yet, but I don't care. I'll welcome his battle anytime he wants." Roy turned without a word and headed off towards a certain building. John had noticed his expression at the mention of the wall and was curious about it. "Elder, what is this enforcement wall you mentioned?" Elder Ragger turned to John and inspected him for a bit before responding. He had appeared earlier in the day, but had noticed John attempting to unleash a battle art, and so had waited in the shadows. The attack John unleashed shocked even Elder Ragger, and he was unfamiliar with such a powerful scythe battle art. "This boy has many, many secrets," Elder Ragger thought before responding to John's question. "The enforcement wall is a wall that disciples are made to sit in front of when they do wrong. The wall emanates a certain pressure, making it quite painful to sit in front of. However, enduring in front of the wall tempers one's will, so it's training and punishment at the same time, although most disciples just see it as painful punishment." John nodded his head in understanding why Roy was unwilling to go there. These sect disciples have probably lived a pampered life here in the Holy Lands, so pain for them is unacceptable even in the pursuit of strength. So naive. Now, the sect leader allowed you to stay as a worker, but to be honest, we don't need any help in the enforcement halls right now, as we are very well staffed. Also, as a worker, I cannot allow you to wander about freely either, or take part in the lessons and training the disciples here do, so what should we do with you for the next 3 months until the entrance exam? The truth of the matter was that Elder Ragger did not want to force John to do mundane work, which was the only thing he could assign to workers. John thought about it for a moment before responding. "Elder, I've advanced greatly in both cultivation and battle arts, and I need to test out my new strength and hone my battle skills. Is there any place that I could do this?" John wanted to see the full extent of his power right now, as even he himself didn't know where it landed. Elder Ragger thought about it for a moment. "That is indeed a good request. Building your strength as much as possible before the entrance exams will definitely raise your chance to get in, since you are not allowed to train on sect grounds as of right now." Elder Ragger racked his brain for a moment before he thought of a fitting place for John to train. There is a forest covering a stretch of mountains just on the outside of the official sect grounds that we use for disciple training occasionally. But since it's technically outside of the sect grounds, you are able to train there. There are many chi condensation beasts in the forest, making it a perfect battleground to test your strength. John's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "This is perfect. I get to train my battle arts, as well as collect more beast blood essence." "That works perfectly for me," John responded, eager to set out immediately. Chapter 139. 4 great sects. The wind rushed through John's hair as he stared at the expansive sect grounds below. Elder Ragger had once again summoned his drake, and it was currently carrying them both to the forest that the elder had mentioned. "Elder, how large is the Heavenly Lightning sect?" John asked, seeking to gather more information regarding the sect. "In terms of numbers or land?" Elder Ragger asked. "Both." In regards to numbers, we have several thousand elders and roughly 30,000 disciples. There are 20,000 outer disciples, 9,000 inner disciples, a few hundred core disciples, and a few dozen direct disciples. With workers, merchants, and other professions as well, there are about 100,000 members of our sect." John was prepared to hear a large number, but the number still surprised him. He remembered what Elder Ragger had told him earlier regarding disciples and wanted to confirm his thoughts. Wait a minute, you said that only Heaven Tribulation Realm elders could have direct disciples. So that means that the sect has dozens of Heaven Tribulation elders? John asked, awestruck by such a number. Elder Ragger chuckled at John's question. Not every Heaven Tribulation elder takes a disciple, so there are more than that. John was stunned silent by the answer. Just one Heaven Tribulation Realm cultivator would be enough to dominate my homeland, but this sect alone has so many of them. So how close are you to breaking through to the Heaven Tribulation Realm? John asked the elder. Elder Ragger smiled and stared up the sky as he spoke. I'm quite close. Within the next year or so, I should be able to attempt to break through. Although, breaking through to the Heaven Tribulation Realm is very dangerous and can easily result in the death of the cultivator, so I must only attempt to do so when I am certain of success. John was starting to see why everyone called this place the Holy Lands for cultivation. It could allow so many powerful cultivators to rise up. Elder Ragger continued answering the second half of John's question. In regards to land, the official land the sect occupies is roughly a few tens of thousands of square miles of land, but that's just officially. As I was telling you earlier, there are 4 great sects that surround the Chi Whirlpool, which is located at the very center of the continent. Each sect oversees the land from the whirlpool to the coasts in an arbitration sort of manner, so any disputes that cannot be handled by the powers themselves in this land defer to the judgment of one of the 4 great sects. Our sect unofficially oversees roughly 1/4 of this continent in such a manner. John listened to the elder's explanation and was starting to get a better picture regarding the Holy Lands. You keep mentioning the 4 great sects, and that the Heavenly Lightning sect is one of them. Who are the other 3 sects? John asked curiously. Elder Ragger chuckled once more at John's question. I forgot, you're not from this land, so you wouldn't know these things. The names of the 4 great sects are known throughout the entire Holy Lands, and they are the Heavenly Lightning sect, the Divine Soul sect, the Bloodfiend sect, and the Supreme Battle sect. Supreme Battle sect. John was completely surprised to hear that name mentioned, and that they were one of the 4 great sects no less. Just how did Father manage to get the battle art from such a powerful sect? He knew his powerful battle art was from the Holy Lands, but never expected it to be from one of the 4 great sects. If the Heavenly Lightning sect was anything to go on, they were quite secretive about their sect, and wouldn't hand out their battle arts to anyone not in the sect. Father clearly has his own secrets, being able to obtain such a battle art for use outside of the sect. However, the news that it stemmed from the Supreme Battle sect was troublesome as well. The page I have details the first stage of the battle art, which is suitable for mist creation and chi condensation realms. After that, it will start to fall off in power, and I'll either need to obtain the next stages or find another body battle art. This is going to be troublesome. John was sure that he wasn't allowed to join 2 sects, and so that was off the table. However, the Supreme Battle art was too powerful to not try to obtain the next stages. I'll try to think of a solution later, as I can't do anything about it now. The 2 continued to travel on the back of the Drake for quite some time. John suddenly thought of another question to ask the elder, as he seemed to be very knowledgeable about the Holy Lands. Elder, do you know of any sects that use domain techniques that targets the blood and mind of a cultivator? I ran into a junior in my homeland who used such a domain, and he said he was from the Holy Lands. John needed to figure out which power was backing up the Crimson Valley sect. The more information he had, the better chance he had to help his clan out of this situation. Elder Ragger was surprised that John would suddenly ask such a question, and was also surprised that he had apparently ran into juniors from this land. He wondered if they were there following up on the same information as the Heavenly Lightning sect was. There are many powers that have domains that do such a thing. Most of them are situated in the Bloodfiend sect's land, as many there train in taboo arts related to blood. Taboo blood arts? Aren't taboo blood arts forbidden and all those that use it hunted down? John asked in confusion. Unfortunately, the Bloodfiend sect and the powers beneath them train in such arts. The situation is complicated enough to hinder anyone from attempting to eliminate them. As such, the only condition that is in place is that they are forbidden to practice their arts anywhere outside of their own land. Elder Ragger responded in a cold tone, clearly disgusted by such practices. Elder Ragger shook his head to eliminate such thoughts, before turning to John once more. Do you know the name of the domain that was used? Perhaps I can recognize which power it is by the name of the technique. The name of the domain was the Crimson Hell Domain, John answered quickly. His memories of the profound domain, used by both Dylan and Jason, was still fresh in his memories. A look of slight surprise appeared on Elder Ragger's face, before it quickly appeared back to normal. I'm surprised you ran into someone using that particular domain. That domain is one of the signature domain arts of the Bloodfiend sect. Chapter 140 Bloodfiend sect, one of the 4 great sects, Godamnit. John was dismayed to hear that the sect helping the Crimson Valley sect was the Bloodfiend sect. They were on par with the Heavenly Lightning sect, which meant their power was something he was unable to even approach in the near term. Not only that, but it seemed as if the Bloodfiend sect was strong enough to deter the other 3 great sects from acting against them, so it would not be easy to enlist the help of the Heavenly Lightning sect, even if he joined them. If it was a first-tier sect or below, John was sure he would be able to use his future status as a Heavenly Lightning sect disciple to dissuade them, but the Bloodfiend sect was a great sect instead. This is going to be a massive problem. The only way I can solve this is either get strong enough myself to change the situation, or become important enough to the Heavenly Lightning sect that they would be willing to offend the Bloodfiend sect for me. John was sure that the first one was impossible. By the time he got strong enough to achieve such a result, the Crimson Valley sect would most likely have destroyed his clan already. The only other option was to become invaluable to the Heavenly Lightning sect, to the point that they would help him despite the consequences of doing so. John thought about potentially joining the Bloodfiend sect and persuading them to alter their course, but he quickly dismissed that as impossible. From the sounds of the sect, and my dealings with Jason and Dylan, the Bloodfiend sect is a brutal sect that places their own interest above all else. Even if I joined the sect and became important enough, I doubt they would alter their plans. Not only that, but a sect that greedy and evil would most likely target me as soon as they realized I had some secrets worth uncovering. Although I would be able to openly train my Immortal Asura body's blood cultivation, the risks are not worth it. Obtaining human blood essence to cultivate the Immortal Asura body would most likely be much easier in such a place, but John was sure that he would not thrive in such a place. Although he had good excuses for many of his secrets, such a place might not care about the explanations and dig into the truth themselves. If they were to discover any of his secrets, John was sure that he would die a miserable death. I can't believe those Crimson Valley assholes sold themselves to the Bloodfiend sect. They should be more than aware that they'll just be swallowed whole once this whole thing is over and done. Idiots. The 2 of them continued to travel on the back of the Drake in silence. Elder Ragger could tell that John was deep in thought and seemed quite serious, but he didn't ask for an explanation. If John wanted to confide in him, he could, but he wasn't going to force it. The journey continued for several more hours, before the Drake slowly began to descend. John looked down to the ground below and saw an expansive mountain range covered in thick vegetation. The dense thicket of trees stretched hundreds of yards into the sky, and loud roars of various beasts echoed throughout the forest, giving it a vibrant but dangerous feeling. There are many chi condensation beasts in this forest, but you don't have to worry about any core formation beasts. The elders remove any beasts that reach that level of strength, as this is a training ground for our chi condensation disciples. It's currently not in use, so you shouldn't expect to run into anyone at the moment. John nodded his head and peered into the forest as the Drake began to descend. After some time, it hovered above the forest canopy, several hundred yards up in the sky. Do you remember how we got here from the sect? Elder Ragger asked. John nodded his head in confirmation. Although the journey had taken many hours on the back of the Drake, it was a relatively straight route back to the sect. Yep. Good, because here's your stop. John frowned at the elder's words. Surely you don't mean for me to jump off at this height, do you? That's exactly what I mean. This forest is too thick for the drake to land in, so you'll have to jump to the trees below. Besides, you have a strong body, so I'm sure you'll be mostly all right, Elder Ragger confirmed, causing John's expression to become complicated. John peered off the edge of the drake and to the ground several hundred yards below, before turning back to the elder. This is my punishment for attempting to fight Roy, isn't it? John asked, and the elder's slight smile at his words confirmed his suspicions. Isn't that a little too harsh? I wasn't even the one who started it. John tried to make his case, but it fell on deaf ears. He looked down to the ground below once more. If I land on one of the tree canopies below, I should be all right. John walked to the edge of the drake's back and prepared to leap off. Remember, the sex entrance exam starts in exactly 94 days. Make sure you arrive at the sex front gates before then, Elder Ragger reminded John, causing him to frown once more. It seemed as if the elder was making him walk all the way back on his own as well. You're being too harsh, John rebuked, but his response once again fell on deaf ears. Well, I suppose that will be training itself, so I can't complain. I'll be back by then, John confirmed to the elder. Just before jumping, John spoke up once more. Thank you for your help so far, Elder Ragger. John took a deep breath and leaped off the edge of the drake. His figure plummeted rapidly towards the trees below. Chapter 140, Bloodfiend Sect, one of the 4 great sects, Godamnit. John was dismayed to hear that the sect helping the Crimson Valley sect was the Bloodfiend sect. They were on par with the Heavenly Lightning sect, which meant their power was something he was unable to even approach in the near term. Not only that, but it seemed as if the Bloodfiend sect was strong enough to deter the other 3 great sects from acting against them, so it would not be easy to enlist the help of the Heavenly Lightning sect, even if he joined them. If it was a first-tier sect or below, John was sure he would be able to use his future status as a Heavenly Lightning sect disciple to dissuade them, but the Bloodfiend sect was a great sect instead. This is going to be a massive problem. The only way I can solve this is either get strong enough myself to change the situation, or become important enough to the Heavenly Lightning sect that they would be willing to offend the Bloodfiend sect for me. John was sure that the first one was impossible. By the time he got strong enough to achieve such a result, the Crimson Valley sect would most likely have destroyed his clan already. The only other option was to become invaluable to the Heavenly Lightning sect, to the point that they would help him despite the consequences of doing so. John thought about potentially joining the Bloodfiend sect and persuading them to alter their course, but he quickly dismissed that as impossible. From the sounds of the sect, and my dealings with Jason and Dylan, the Bloodfiend sect is a brutal sect that places their own interest above all else. Even if I joined the sect and became important enough, I doubt they would alter their plans. Not only that, but a sect that greedy and evil would most likely target me as soon as they realized I had some secrets worth uncovering. Although I would be able to openly train my Immortal Asura body's blood cultivation, the risks are not worth it. Obtaining human blood essence to cultivate the Immortal Asura body would most likely be much easier in such a place, but John was sure that he would not thrive in such a place. Although he had good excuses for many of his secrets, such a place might not care about the explanations and dig into the truth themselves. If they were to discover any of his secrets, John was sure that he would die a miserable death. I can't believe those Crimson Valley assholes sold themselves to the Bloodfiend sect. They should be more than aware that they'll just be swallowed whole once this whole thing is over and done. Idiots. The 2 of them continued to travel on the back of the drake in silence. Elder Ragger could tell that John was deep in thought and seemed quite serious, but he didn't ask for an explanation. If John wanted to confide in him, he could, but he wasn't going to force it. The journey continued for several more hours, before the drake slowly began to descend. John looked down to the ground below and saw an expansive mountain range covered in thick vegetation. The dense thicket of trees stretched hundreds of yards into the sky, and loud roars of various beasts echoed throughout the forest, giving it a vibrant but dangerous feeling. There are many chi condensation beasts in this forest, but you don't have to worry about any core formation beasts. The elders remove any beasts that reach that level of strength, as this is a training ground for our chi condensation disciples. It's currently not in use, so you shouldn't expect to run into anyone at the moment. John nodded his head and peered into the forest as the drake began to descend. After some time, it hovered above the forest canopy, several hundred yards up in the sky. "Do you remember how we got here from the sect?" Elder Ragger asked. John nodded his head in confirmation. Although the journey had taken many hours on the back of the drake, it was a relatively straight route back to the sect. "Yep." "Good, because here's your stop." John frowned at the elder's words. "Surely you don't mean for me to jump off at this height, do you?" "That's exactly what I mean. This forest is too thick for the drake to land in, so you'll have to jump to the trees below. Besides, you have a strong body, so I'm sure you'll be mostly all right," Elder Ragger confirmed, causing John's expression to become complicated. John peered off the edge of the drake and to the ground several hundred yards below, before turning back to the elder. "This is my punishment for attempting to fight Roy, isn't it?" John asked, and the elder's slight smile at his words confirmed his suspicions. "Isn't that a little too harsh? I wasn't even the one who started it." John tried to make his case, but it fell on deaf ears. He looked down to the ground below once more. "If I land on one of the tree canopies below, I should be all right." John walked to the edge of the drake's back and prepared to leap off. "Remember, the sect's entrance exam starts in exactly 94 days. Make sure you arrive at the sect's front gates before then," Elder Ragger reminded John, causing him to frown once more. It seemed as if the elder was making him walk all the way back on his own as well. "You're being too harsh," John rebuked, but his response once again fell on deaf ears. "Well, I suppose that will be training itself, so I can't complain. I'll be back by then," John confirmed to the elder. Just before jumping, John spoke up once more. "Thank you for your help so far, Elder Ragger." John took a deep breath and leaped off the edge of the drake. His figure plummeted rapidly towards the trees below. Chapter 141, Fighting in the Forest. Elder Ragger smiled and shook his head as he watched John plummeted to the ground below. A small object suddenly appeared in his hands, and Elder Ragger channeled his chi into it. Some time later, another person suddenly appeared in the air next to the drake that Elder Ragger stood on. He wore the same gray enforcement hall robes as Elder Ragger, signifying that he was an elder himself. Elder Ragger turned to the newcomer. "The boy below will be in this forest for the next 3 months. Watch over him secretly and make sure no fatal harm comes to him. Other than that, do not interfere." "It will be done." The newcomer nodded in affirmation, and his figure suddenly vanished from sight. Elder Ragger turned his eyes back down towards John for a moment before the drake once more took to the skis, returning to the heavenly lightning sect. John braced himself for impact as he crashed into a tree's canopy. Branches continuously shattered as he crashed through them violently and continued to plummet to the ground below. Boom! John's feet landed on the solid ground, causing a loud sound to echo throughout the forest. The force of the landing sent a wave of pain through his body, and his organs shifted slightly, but he was unharmed for the most part. He looked up at the tree he had just fallen from and was able to see the hole he had carved into its canopy. Many branches, both thick and thin, had been snapped in half from his quick descent. The tree branches slowed my descent by quite a bit. Otherwise, that would have hurt a lot more. I can't wait until I'm able to start flying. Then I won't have to deal with things like this. Once one reached the core formation realm, they were able to start using their powerful chi to take flight and propel themselves through the skis. However, John was still quite a ways away from the core formation realm, making him quite envious of those who were in that realm already. John's head turned to observe his surroundings. In every direction as far as the eye could see, towering trees dominated the mountainous landscape. Their canopies stretched hundreds of yards high, and many massive branches on the way up held various beasts that were staring at him. The forest was blanketed in a perpetual shade, due to the trees blocking most of the sunlight. Mist creation beasts, huh? Let's explore and see if I can find any chi condensation beasts to test out my strength. I also need to start gathering beast blood essence, so I have plenty of reserves for the entrance exam. John proceeded to walk through the forest for some time, curiously observing everything within. The forest was littered with areas scarred by battle, clearly due to fights between cultivators and beasts. Many towering trees were cut clean in half, their long trunks littering the forest floor. Sharp scars in both trees and earth hinted towards the attacks used in those battles. An ancient feeling permeated throughout the forest, making John feel quite insignificant within. Before long, John walked into a slight clearing in the mountainous forest. 100 yards ahead of him, he could see a massive nest, housing 3 large eggs. Behind the eggs, a giant lizard, nearly 20 feet long and 8 feet tall, was sleeping. An early-stage chi condensation, red-scaled lizard. This should be a good test fight to gauge my strength. John started walking towards the lizard, with no intention of hiding his presence. The lizard quickly noticed John's arrival. It powerfully hissed at him, attempting to drive it away from the eggs. "I'll leave your eggs alone, but come entertain me for a bit," John commented, stopping 50 yards from the nest. The lizard noticed his provocation and quickly dashed towards him. The ground quaked slightly with every step it took, and it reached John within a second. Boom! A fist collided with the head of the lizard, knocking it back slightly. John quickly dashed forward once more, raining a barrage of fist blows on the lizard's head and body. He was using his fists at the moment to test the new strength of his body. Bang, 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 bang. The rapid barrage of punches continued to rain down on the lizard, causing its scales to shatter and its blood to flow. The lizard hissed in pain and quickly turned around, sending its massive tail directly towards John. The tail collided with John's body, sending him flying back violently towards the tree line. His body collided with a large tree, causing it to snap directly in half. He slowly stood up and wiped the blood from his lips as the massive tree behind him crashed into the ground. The ground shook from the weight of the tree, crashing violently to the forest floor, and dust kicked up all around them. Not bad, let's kick this up a notch. Supreme battle art. John once again dashed towards the lizard. The sound of powerful blows continued to echo throughout the forest, and trees were constantly snapped in half and crashing into the forest floor below. Before long, the area near the nest of eggs was littered with fallen trees and sunken craters in the ground, depicting a story of the battle that had taken place. John sat on top of the unmoving body of the lizard with a satisfied smile on his face. His robes were torn in many places, and blood was smeared on his body, from both the lizard and himself. His breathing was somewhat heavy, but other than that, he was mostly unharmed. Below him, the corpse of the lizard rested. Its body was broken in many places, and blood covered all of its scales, showing the brutal beating it had taken in their fight. A piece of meat was forcefully ripped off of its corpse, and John sent a slight stream of gentle lightning into the piece, slowly cooking it. While I may not know any lightning battle arts yet, at least I can use my lightning like this, John chuckled as he cooked the piece of meat before biting into it. His eyes lit up at the taste of the meat. Not bad. He added some salt to it from his storage ring, and continued to eat the juicy piece of meat while he ruminated over the battle he had just fought. My body alone, augmented by the supreme battle art, is enough to defeat and kill an early chi condensation beast. If I were to throw in my scythe, as well as my divine reaping scythe, I'm sure I could more than hold my own against a mid-chi condensation beast. My strength has truly grown a lot in such a short time. John was quite pleased with his progress, which had grown rapidly in just a short span of time. I wonder how strong my battle prowess will be when I use the Immortal Asura transformation art on top of all of that. The Immortal Asura transformation art was a physical transformation of John's body. and it provided an immense strength increase to him. It was his peak battle state, however. It required an equally immense amount of blood essence to maintain. It provides me a massive power boost, but from the small amount of time that I used it before, I can tell that it was putting a great strain on my body. I estimate that I can use it for a minute at most, before I am no longer able to endure the stress on my body. I'll need to save it as a trump card. However, I need to test it out in battle, at least once, to fully quantify how much more powerful I am in that state. John finished eating the piece of meat and hopped off the body of the lizard. He made a small incision on the lizard's forehead and drew its blood essence from its body, before storing both the lizard's corpse and blood essence in his palace realm. He walked over to the nest of 3 eggs next. These won't survive without their parents to guard them, but I can't store living things in my palace realm or storage ring, so I'll leave them here. Maybe their other parent will show up soon. Either way, good luck. John walked through the forest once more, seeking powerful beasts to battle. Before long, he ran into the territory of another powerful beast. It was a large spike-spined snake, nearly 30 yards long, and its power signified it was equivalent to a mid-chi condensation cultivator. John's face lit up as he noticed the snake. I've already cleared the surrounding area, and you're the only strong beast here. You'll be the perfect target dummy to test my full strength. He slowly walked towards the snake, which hissed at him in anger. It was unable to deter the boy from approaching, and so its massive mouth, filled with 2 sharp fans, lunged directly towards him. John smiled confidently at the approaching snake as a scythe appeared in his hands, and his eyes slowly turned blood red. Chapter 142. Day of the entrance exam in a valley between 2 large mountains. A massive white and gold gate several hundred yards wide and tall stood, guarding its entrance for all who wished to enter. 2 massive blue lightning bolts were carved into either side of the gate, and massive walls extended outwards in both directions from the gate as far as the eye could see. A wide road led directly to the entrance of the gate, and over 50,000 people were gathered before the gate, with more people arriving by the minute. The crowd ranged from young teenagers to the elderly, and a boisterous atmosphere filled the crowd. Many large and powerful beasts were seen throughout the crowd, with grand carriages attached to them. Powerful cultivators were seen guarding the carriages, and many important-looking people, dressed in fine robes and surrounded by a large following, were present. Some of the cultivators were floating in the sky above the crowd, but none dared venture higher than the height of the gate itself, as doing so was considered an act of disrespect. Closest to the gate, tens of thousands of young juniors stood. Their expressions ranged from nervous to confident, and their cultivations were all in the chi condensation realm. Today was the start of the Heavenly Lightning Sect's entrance exam, and all the juniors from the surrounding lands who wanted to join had gathered at the gate. The massive crowd showed just how many people yearned to enter the sect. The only requirement to enter the entrance exam was that the cultivator should be below the core formation realm and be 16 years of age or below. As such, most of the cultivators gathered to enter the test were 15 or 16 years of age. The crowd of juniors bustled with anxious chatter, while the crowd of adults discussed their predictions of this year's entrance exams amongst themselves. Within the crowd of juniors, one boy stepped forward to the front of the crowd, and the eyes of many looked towards him. "That's Mason Light," one of the girls in the crowd commented, pointing to the boy standing at the front of the pack. He had long silver hair, which loosely flowed over his shoulders, and a handsome face with arched eyebrows. He wore a pure white robe, and his face displayed an unbridled arrogance and confidence. "He's the prodigy from the Light clan. I hear he's their most promising junior to rise up in his clan in hundreds of years, and his clan believes he has a good shot to make it as a core disciple in the Heavenly Lightning Sect. He's also aiming to be the #1 junior in the entrance exam," a nearby boy commented, drawing the eyes of many to look at Mason. Mason stood there with an arrogant smile and basked in the attention he was getting. However, his cultivation was at the peak of the chi condensation realm, showing that he had the strength to back up such arrogance. A girl soon stepped up to the front of the crowd, and the eyes of all those in the large crowd focused on her. She had long brown hair, tied up into 2 ponytails, and had soft facial features, making her look quite childlike and adorable to most. Her large brown eyes looked forward cheerfully. Heated discussions broke out once more. "That's me Fairy, from the Fairy clan." "Me Fairy, that's her. I hear she's the #1 junior of the Fairy clan and successfully cultivated their ancestral water tome. She's definitely going to be one of the juniors aiming for the #1 spot this year." While the group was discussing me, 3 more juniors stepped to the front of the group, each displaying a look of confidence. "Who are these 3?" one of the juniors asked. Clearly, each of the 3 were confident enough in themselves to step forward. Although it was unofficial, during each entrance exam, all those vying for the #1 spot would step forward to the front of the group before the exams started. Such an action signified that they were confident in fighting for the #1 spot, which came with prestige, as well as extra rewards. However, only those with true confidence in themselves would do such a thing. One of the more knowledgeable juniors pointed to a girl who had stepped up. She had long blonde hair which flowed freely down to her waist, and a pretty face that stunned many of the boys speechless. However, she had a cold demeanor that made all those nearby not want to approach her. A powerful aura radiated from her, and small wisps of lightning danced over her skin occasionally. "That's June, the #1 junior from the Raging Lightning sect." "Raging Lightning sect? That's a first-tier lightning sect. No wonder she has such confidence. I hear they train their lightning arts in quite a brutal way. They always have a small item filled with lightning essence on their body, which constantly tempers their body to be able to handle the brutal lightning techniques of their sect." Many looked towards the lightning occasionally dancing over June's skin and shivered slightly. Surely such a cultivation technique would be painful, but she acted as if she didn't notice it. The eyes of the crowd shifted over to the boy standing next to June. He had a bald head, carried a large greatsword on his back, and appeared older than most of the juniors in the group. His tall frame towered over all of the other juniors, and his powerful body carried an intimidating presence. "Isn't that one a little too old to be participating in these exams?" one junior asked in a hushed tone. Another looked towards that person as if they were stupid before responding. "That's Russell Guard from the Ruinous Earth sect. He might look like that, but he's only 15 like the rest of us. He apparently has a very powerful body, and most of his fights end in him brutally beating his opponents into the ground. Most flee just at the sight of him." "Russell from the Ruinous Earth sect. I hear he has an innate variant body. Even though it's only the common grade, it's still enough to dominate most in his realm." "Innate variant body? No wonder he looks like that." The eyes of many of the juniors opened wide in shock at the mention of Russell's variant body. Even within the Holy Lands, variant bodies were not commonly seen. In fact, within the crowd of tens of thousands of juniors, Russell was the only one with such a body. The crowd's eyes shifted over to the 5th and final junior who had stepped forward. It was a boy with long and straight brown hair. His face was more on the pretty side, making him appear quite feminine, and he carried an ornate fan in his hands which he waved in front of his face. His thin frame was dressed by a pure gold robe, which caught the attention of many. "That's the second prince of the Randall kingdom, Hartley Randall. I hear his brother, the first prince, is taking over the kingdom when their father dies, and so Hartley has focused on his cultivation instead. He's apparently the prince with the highest martial potential in the Randall kingdom," one junior commented. "Randall kingdom. That kingdom is equivalent to a first-tier sect, so he must be incredibly strong." All 5 of the juniors who stepped forward radiated a powerful peak chi condensation cultivation. Despite being from powerful backgrounds themselves, each of them yearned to enter the Heavenly Lightning sect. Entering such a sect would change their fortunes forever, and would also elevate the status of the powers they came from. While the crowd fervently discussed the many promising young juniors in this year's entrance exam, many eyes peered down from the top of the walls at the crowd below. One familiar face in a gray robe scanned the crowd below for someone in particular, but was unable to locate that face. He turned to a man standing next to him who had just appeared and spoke up. Chapter 143. If you want to fight, let's fight. The group of juniors all looked at John with mixed expressions. Some stared at him with curiosity, some confusion, and some as if he was stupid, with both Russell and Mason staring at him in such a manner. Me and Hartley stared at John with amused curiosity, while June ignored everyone, focusing only on the gate in front of her. John began to become annoyed at how many of them were staring at him, namely the two boys in the front of the group. Look at this stupid bumpkin, daring to step forward despite only being in the mid-chi condensation realm, Mason commented in a snide tone, causing John to frown. What the fuck are you looking at? John grumbled out towards Mason and Russell. He was still in a bad mood from his arduous journey, and did not like the way he was being looked at by those two, as if he was beneath them. He had been on constant edge in the forest, always having to be prepared for a battle with a powerful beast at a moment's notice. As such, John had developed quite a sharp edge to his personality over the past few months, and it would take some time for him to unwind and relax himself. Many of the juniors in the crowd had looks of shock appear on their faces. Who is this boy? Does he not know who he's talking to, or does he not care? One girl commented. Look at him, he's clearly a nobody, who probably doesn't even know the customs of this entrance exam. He's only in the mid-chi condensation realm, so he's clearly unworthy of standing there. A boy in the crowd chimed up in a mocking tone, and those nearby all nodded their heads in agreement. You're probably right. That boy most likely doesn't even know who he's just offended. His time within the entrance exam won't be a pleasant one, another junior chimed in. Many similar discussions broke out throughout the crowd. There were thousands and thousands of juniors who had cultivations at the late chi condensation realm. Despite that, none of them dared step forward to the front of the crowd, as they knew that was reserved for only the strongest of them. However, this unknown boy suddenly did so, with only a cultivation at the mid-chi condensation realm. Clearly, he had no idea what he was doing, or who he was offending. Elder Ragger stared down from the top of the wall at John, and a slight smile hung on his face. Not bad, he advanced once more to the middle chi condensation realm. It seems his time in the forest was quite bountiful. Elder Ragger turned his head sideways to look at the man standing next to him. You were watching over him for the last 3 months. Tell me, how is his combat prowess? Although Elder Ragger had spent quite a bit of time with John, he had never seen him fight, and so was unsure of how powerful he really was. He was hoping for a good assessment from the elder who guarded John. The man next to Elder Ragger was silent for a moment as a thoughtful look appeared on his face. His combat prowess is terrifying. The man's assessment was short, but it was enough to cause Elder Ragger to raise his eyebrows in slight surprise. He knew John was talented, given that he had an innate variant body and a lightning attribute body, but for him to get such an assessment from the man was beyond the elder's expectations. A smile slowly appeared on Elder Ragger's face, once more, as he turned to look back down towards the crowd below. Then, it seems like this year's entrance exam will be quite entertaining. John continued to stare at the two boys with cold eyes as they continued to look down on him. Kid, you're lucky we're in front of the Heavenly Lightning Sect. Otherwise, I would love to see how long you can look at me like that. Mason spoke up in an annoyed tone. He was used to being looked up to and revered, and did not like the way this dirty and weak newcomer was looking at him. Who cares about where we are? If you want to fight, then let's fight, John stated bluntly, causing both Mason to frown. Shock appeared on the faces of all the nearby youths. All John had done was walk to the front of the crowd, and yet he was being looked down upon and insulted. He had no idea why this was happening, but would not stand by idly while it occurred. Haha, that's exactly the type of attitude a cultivator should have. I'll take up your offer, Russell stated loudly while laughing. His fists powerfully collided together, and his powerful aura began to flare from his body. It appeared as if he truly was about to start fighting John in front of the gate. The power emanating from Russell's body shocked all the nearby youths. How powerful! No wonder he has the confidence to stand at front and claim that he will obtain first this year. That's more like it, John replied with a smile as he too began to prepare for battle, undeterred by Russell's display of power. His aura began to grow as he prepared to clash with the muscular boy. However, just as he was about to move, a familiar hand of immense power once again pushed down on his shoulder, making him unable to move at all. There will be no fighting before the exam begins, Elder Ragger stated. At the sight of a heavenly lightning sect elder's arrival, Russell's aura immediately retracted, and he bowed his head slightly as he retreated to his original position. Apologies, Elder. John turned his head to look at Elder Ragger as a frown appeared on his face. He turned and pointed at the Elder. You old fart, you clearly knew how tough getting back would be, didn't you? Couldn't you have dropped me off a little closer to the gate? Shock appeared on the faces of all those in the crowd as they heard John speak to the Elder in such a manner. Not only that, but the boy's words indicated that there was some sort of familiarity between him and the Elder. Elder Ragger cleared his throat and did his best to keep a straight face. He could tell that John was joking with him for the most part, but the Elder had to keep his poise to maintain face for the sect. A set of black robes suddenly appeared in Elder Ragger's hands as he handed them over to John. Take these and put one on, you're completely filthy. As for those words you just said to me, I hope you're prepared to sit in front of the enforcement wall for some time as punishment. John's lips quivered as he listened to the words of the Elder, but he didn't argue back. He knew the Elder had to maintain his appearance and status, and so he decided to back down. He wasn't truly mad at Elder Ragger, just frustrated from such an arduous journey. John accepted the robe and donned one immediately while storing the others away. With a thought, the dirty half-torn robe on his body was sent to his storage ring, leaving only the clean robe on his body. He was just about to speak to Elder Ragger once more when the Elder suddenly disappeared from his sight. Silence. A loud voice suddenly boomed above the crowd, causing everyone to look up into the sky at the source of the voice. A woman, who appeared to be in her mid-20s, hovered high above the gate and stared down at the crowd below. Her luxurious white and gold robe billowed gently in the wind, and her long blue hair seemed to glow in the sunlight. Her face was very attractive, but her sharp features and serious face, as well as intimidatingly powerful presence, made all those who looked at her feel as if they were staring at a powerful battle deity. Chapter 144 Vice, Sect Leader. The crowd looked towards the woman high up in the sky. The woman looked down on all those below, and once more spoke up in a powerful voice. As the Vice Sect Leader of the Heavenly Lightning Sect, I welcome all those here to the annual entrance exams for our sect. John stared at the woman who had suddenly appeared. Vice Sect Leader, she's just like the sect leader. Her power is something so high up that I can't even begin to imagine how strong she is. Although John did not use his divine sense to inspect her, as that would be suicide, he was able to tell that the woman was so strong that he had only ever met one person stronger in his life, who was the sect leader himself. Hushed conversations immediately broke out throughout the crowd. That's the Vice Sect Leader. I heard she's an absolute battle maniac. True, I've heard that amongst all cultivators in the Holy Lands, she's the one who loves battle the most. Most avoid her out of fear, as when she starts fighting, blood is always shed. John heard some of the hushed conversations and was surprised to hear such an appraisal of the Vice Sect Leader. However, he could feel an intimidating battle lust naturally emanate from the woman, making him believe those rumors. The Vice Sect Leader glared at the crowd below, causing all those who were speaking to shut their mouths in fear. Silence descended on the crowd once more. The Vice Sect Leader stared at the crowd for a moment before speaking up once more. I will now explain the rules of the entrance exam. The entrance exam will last 1 week. All those who enter must be below the core formation realm and 16 years of age or below. There are 5 stages to the exam, and to enter the sect as an outer disciple, the third stage must be cleared. Those who pass the fourth stage will become inner disciples, and those who pass the fifth will become core disciples. Most in the crowd were familiar with the rules of the entrance exam, as they were explained in detail every year. However, this information was new to John, and so he listened closely. The trials will be monitored closely by elders, and cheating of any kind will be dealt with severely. No treasures or weapons that use outside power will be permitted. Everything must be powered by the cultivators themselves. John nodded his head in agreement at this rule. There were bound to be incredibly powerful treasures in the Holy Lands that the juniors could use, which would provide an unfair advantage. Lastly, fighting within the exams are permitted only when allowed by the specific trial. Fighting outside the permitted trials will result in disqualification. Lastly, the top cultivators who do the best within the exams will be given special rewards. That is all. The vice sect leader explained the rules to the crowd in full, which were fairly simple. After explaining the rules, she suddenly vanished from everyone's sight. No one had managed to see how she left. She's just like the sect leader. She moves so fast that I can't even track her movements. I wonder how high her cultivation is. After the vice sect leader left, the massive white gates began to part, and a different elder appeared in front of them. His voice boomed out across the crowd, drawing the attention of all. The Heavenly Lightning Sect entrance exams have begun. All those who wish to participate, please follow me through the gate. The eyes of all the juniors lit up as they began to walk forward towards the open gates, while excited shouts of encouragement boomed out from the crowd in the back. Mason turned to John and stared at him with an amused expression before he began to walk forward, making sure to stay at the front of the crowd. John stared at Mason indifferently before he too began to walk with the crowd. Before long, he appeared directly at the gate and stepped through. A strange feeling passed over him, but other than that, nothing happened. Gah! A loud cry of pain echoed out behind him, causing John to turn his head in curiosity. He managed to see a boy, who looked slightly older than 16, violently flung backwards away from the gate. Blood squirted out of various wounds on his body, and he appeared quite miserable. His body landed on the ground, where he curled up in pain. Many adults in the crowd watching, as well as the elders on top of the walls, shook their heads in a disapproving manner. Idiot, does he think he can fool the Heavenly Lightning Sect? Every year people try to sneak in despite being older than 16 years of age, and every year the formation at the gate rejects them violently. His bone age is clearly older than 16. John heard similar discussions brought up amongst the nearby juniors and came to an understanding of what happened. He shook his head before turning forward once more. The crowd continued to talk for some time, led by the elder who had spoken up earlier. The group followed the main road into the sect grounds, which existed in a valley that weaved through the surrounding mountains. The tall mountains were covered in lush green trees, giving them a vibrant feeling, and snow capped the very tops of the mountains. A wide and powerful river with clear blue water rushed next to the main road, and many grand bridges stretching over the river were seen. Many roads stretched out from the main road, leading to various unknown parts of the sect grounds. Magnificent buildings occasionally dotted the sides of the road, although this part of the sect grounds was mostly uninhabited. Majestic-looking deer with large blue antlers roamed the riverbank, and they all seemed to be tamed. Many types of rare medicinal ingredients grew on the river bank, surprising John greatly. The early morning sunlight filtered through the mist kicked up by the powerful river, giving an ethereal glow to the valley. Many powerful cultivators, some being carried by large beasts, traveled on the road, going in both directions. Caravans carting various goods traveled in a hurried manner. John and the rest of the youths couldn't help but take in all the grand sights as they followed the elder. After 15 minutes of walking through the picturesque valley, the elder stopped at a large cleared-out area next to the main road. Directly behind him, hundreds of large tables, each with a stone tablet next to them, were visible. There was an elder seated at every table. John recognized the stone tablet, as he had seen something similar before. That's just like the essence tablet during the tournament in the Varus clan. The elder in charge addressed the massive crowd once more. This is the first test of the entrance exams, the Essence Chi and Talent Test. Chapter 145, the first test, Essence Chi and Talent Test. I know what an Essence Chi test is, but what constitutes a talent test? John mumbled out loud. He had taken the Essence Chi test in the tournament, which quantified his Essence Chi output and strength, but had no idea what a talent test constituted. A talent test is an inspection of your body, from the meridians, acupoints, Danshan, and more to see if you have the required natural talent to become a powerful cultivator. A voice behind John chimed up, answering his question. John turned around to the source of the voice, which was a boy his age. The boy had an average face, with short brown hair and brown eyes. His face still had some baby fat on it, making him appear younger than most at the exam. He was a head shorter than John, and had a relatively thin frame for a cultivator. "Oh, thanks for answering," John stated, unsure of who this newcomer was. The boy stretched his hand out in greeting, and a smile appeared on his face as he spoke to John once more. "I'm Adam." There was a look of pride on his face, as if John should know who he was. John shook the boy's hand, but was confused as to why he was talking to him or why he was so friendly, as he was sure he didn't know this boy. Adam noticed the somewhat confused look on John's face. "We don't know each other, but I saw your bold display earlier towards Mason and Russell. I have to say, I'm quite impressed with your guts, talking to them like that despite only being in the mid-chi condensation realm." Adam gave him a thumbs up, and John could only rub the back of his head, unsure of what to say. He hadn't done that to get attention or make a statement. He had just been ticked off by how the two of them looked at him. "Oh, thanks." "No problem. I'm not sure why, but I can tell that there's something special about you. Not only that, but you don't seem like a pompous asshole like the others. I think you're going to make it far in this sect, and I want to ride your coattails as far as I can, so as of right now, I am your first official follower," Adam stated without a hint of shame, causing John to stare at him with a bewildered expression. What? I don't need any followers," John replied, unsure of what exactly was going on. He had no idea who this Adam was, and although he didn't have a bad opinion of him, he preferred to be alone. However, Adam was undeterred by John's response. I know, I don't look that strong, but trust me, I can help you in a lot of ways. I happen to know many things about this sect and the surrounding powers, so I can always help with that. You didn't even know about the customs of the exam at the front gate, so I'm sure you don't know much about this land. Besides, you'll need followers once you're inside the sect if you want to be a core disciple or higher. I can tell you're unfamiliar with this sect and how it works, but it's pretty common knowledge that every core disciple and above has a following of disciples below them. Adam paused for a moment before walking to John's side and draping his arm around John's shoulders. His actions made it seem like he had been best friends with John for years. I may not look strong, but I'm a formations expert. I'll be invaluable to you, Adam stated, his face brimming with pride. Clearly, he was proud of the fact that he studied formations and claimed to be an expert on top of all that. Formations expert. That could actually be pretty useful to know someone like that. Formations experts were able to do all sorts of amazing things with formations if their talent and comprehensions were high enough. John stood there in silence, staring at Adam, who still had his arm draped around his shoulders. Adam smiled and spoke up before John could say anything. I know you're amazed that I'm a formations expert, and I don't blame you. But like I said, I see a bright future in you, and so I'm willing to follow you. Adam had a look on his face as if he was doing John a massive favor. John shrugged Adam's arm off his shoulders and shook his head in confusion before walking forward with the rest of the group of youths. Adam quickly dashed forward to catch up and walked closely behind John, talking nonstop about himself and the Heavenly Lightning sect. The elder in charge of the trials addressed the crowd once more. Line up in even lines in front of every table. Order or table does not matter. If you pass the first trial, you will be given an identity badge for the remainder of the exam. Those who fail will be asked to leave the sect grounds immediately. John stepped into one of the lines that had formed, and Adam followed behind closely. While waiting in line, John turned to Adam, who was still talking the entire time. Since you claim to know so much about this sect and its entrance exam, do you know the average passing rate? John asked curiously. Knowing the passing rate would give him a rough approximation on how good he would have to do compared to the rest of the group. I sure do. On average, the passing rate each year is around 15%, with the other 85% failing. John raised his eyebrows in surprise at Adam's words. He had expected a failure rate of about 50%, but the truth was much more brutal. Don't worry, though. Talent plays as much of a part as cultivation level in these exams, so some amid-chi condensation cultivators manage to become outer disciples, Adam elaborated. He assumed John was concerned with passing the exam with his lower cultivation compared to the elite here, and did his best to reassure him. John shook his head but didn't elaborate. The line continued to creep forward, and before long he was next. Next in line, step forward, a voice called out. He walked forward to the table and stood directly in front of it, waiting for the elder to speak up. After a moment of silence, the elder looked up to John and frowned slightly. He was still dirty and bloody from his arduous journey, and so he looked as if he didn't take this exam seriously. All the other youths were dressed in luxurious robes and were as clean as possible, while John looked like a homeless beggar. I had some troubles getting here. John rubbed the back of his head and mumbled with an embarrassed tone. Chapter 146. The bizarre Adam Fenix the Elder looked at John in a disapproving manner, but didn't comment on his appearance again. Walk to the stone tablet and place your hand on the circle carved in its center. Inject your essence chi into it. You pass if the light shines at the top of the tablet's formation. The instructions were simple but clear. John nodded his head and walked to the large stone tablet at the side of the table. There were formation etchings all over the tablet, with a large carved circle located in the middle. He placed his hand on the center of the tablet and took a deep breath before injecting his essence chi into the tablet with all his might. He had already tried to use his body chi on these types of tablets back in the tournament tests, and it didn't work, so he didn't bother attempting that today. Chi surged from his danshan, through his meridians, and into the tablet for several seconds before he stopped. The tablet remained quiet for a short time before it began to light up, giving off a vibrant blue glow. The elder looked at the tablet, and before turning to John and asking him to approach her, John nodded his head and walked over to the elder, who quickly reached out and grabbed his wrist. A powerful divine sense invaded John's body, and chi from the elder was forcefully injected into John's body. It began to snake through his body, meridian, acupoints, and more, and John felt completely exposed at such a test. However, he did not resist such a probe. This must be the talent test Adam mentioned, although I figured it would be a bit more official than an inspection by an elder. I suppose talent is a more subjective sort of test. John had expected another wonderful item like the stone tablet to test his talent, but it was the elder instead. John stood there awkwardly for some time as the elder continued to inspect his body. A slightly confused look appeared on the elder's face as she inspected his body, but she let go of his wrist after a short while. You pass. What is your name? John breathed out a sigh of relief, having successfully passed the first test. He didn't expect to fail, but passing was a relief nonetheless. John Fenix, he replied. The elder looked up and closely studied John's face. So you're the one Elder Ragger mentioned. He expects great things from you, so don't disappoint him. The elder's tone had softened slightly. John was surprised that Elder Ragger had been talking about him to his colleagues, and in a positive light as well. He nodded his head and stood before the elder in silence. The elder had a small item in her hand and seemed to be using her chi to do something to it. After a brief waiting period, she looked back towards John and handed him the small item in her hands. This is your identity badge for the rest of the entrance exam. Do not lose it. John nodded his head and happily accepted the item. Thank you, Elder. Please proceed to the next trial. Next in line, step forward, the Elder called out, and John stepped past the desk and began to walk in the direction of all those who had passed. After a moment's thought, John stopped and turned around, wanting to watch the next examinee. Adam quickly dashed towards the table, almost crashing into it, but managed to stop just before doing so. Greetings, Elder, Adam called out in a friendly tone, as if they were best friends. He made sure to bow in an exaggerated manner, adding as much flair to his movements as possible. The Elder looked at him with a disapproving expression, before giving him the same instructions she had given John. Adam confidently strode over to the stone tablet, and after a moment's pause, began to channel his chi into the tablet. He continued to do so for several seconds, and John watched closely, curious to see if Adam would pass the test. After nearly 10 seconds, the stone tablet still had not lit up at the top, signifying that he had not passed. The Elder frowned and began to speak. You have failed. Wait, Adam cried out quickly, waving his hands in every direction. I just wasn't warmed up is all. Let me try it again. His panicked tone amused John, causing him to chuckle slightly. Before the Elder could respond back, Adam placed his hand on the tablet once more and began to channel chi into it with all his power. Before long, his face had turned blood red, and he seemed as if he was about to pass out from the exertion of trying to pass the test. However, after a short delay, the faintest of blue lights appeared at the top of the tablet. A look of pure delight appeared on Adam's previously exhausted face, before a look of unbridled pride washed over it. See, he said to the Elder, such a thing is trivial for a man as gifted as myself. He confidently strutted over to the Elder, ready to take the talent test. He outstretched his arm in an over-the-top manner, flicking his wrist in an exaggerated flare before it came to rest before the Elder. A confident smile hung on his face, and he smiled towards John. Ow! Adam cried out in pain as the Elder grabbed his wrist with much force. His prideful face quickly turned into one wincing with pain as the Elder began her talent inspection, being sure to use enough force on his wrist to cause some pain. Ow, mercy, I beg you. Adam cried out as he tried to pull his arm away, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. The Elder nonchalantly inspected his body and made sure to take her time while doing so. Adam continued to yell in an exaggerated manner, causing John to have a look of disbelief on his face. Just, who is this clown? Merciful pleas continued to ring out as Adam begged for mercy. The Elder eventually let go of his wrist, as a small, satisfied smile hung on her face. Clearly, she had enjoyed taking him down a notch. You pass, but just barely. What is your name? The Elder asked. Adam's defeated look quickly turned back to one brimming with confidence and pride, as if his pathetic display mere seconds ago never happened. Adam Fenix, he stated proudly, as if his name resounded famously throughout the lands. The Elder recorded the name in the identity badge, as well as other information, before handing it over to him. Adam took the badge, and a large smile appeared on his face. He strutted over to John with a confident stride. Such a simple test can't hold such talented cultivators as ourselves back, right? Adam stated with his chest puffed out, causing John to put his hand on his face in disbelief. Chapter 147, Second Trial. John stared at Adam for a short moment before he turned around without a word and followed the pathway to the next test. Behind all the tables, a small pathway, several yards wide, cut into the nearby forest. The vibrant trees, covered with blooming flowers of different kinds, framed the pathway, making it quite a scenic walk. The pathway continued for nearly a mile. Adam closely followed John the entire time and continued to talk non-stop about various things, such as the heavenly lightning sect, the entrance exam, the powerful participants to look out for, and more. If I were to give you any advice, it would be to stay away from Mason and Russell for now. Although I can tell you're strong, those two are complete monsters. Mason is from the Light Clan, which is a first-tier clan and is their most promising junior. His combat prowess is terrifying. As for that Russell, he's equally terrifying. He has an innate variant body, so don't ever try to fight him head-on. Keep your distance and attack him from afar. Innate variant body. Interesting, John replied. A small smile appeared on his face. Seems like this truly is the gathering place for monsters. I should find some good opponents in this sect. John was looking forward to the inevitable fights to come with those two, as he knew they would target him. The stronger people I fight, the faster my strength will rise. After walking for some time, John and Adam arrived at the next trial. The pathway left the forest and stopped directly in front of an ancient-looking city. The city was several miles wide and long, and most of the brick buildings seemed to have been ravaged by the erosion of time. A large stone archway stood tall at the entrance to the city, and tall brick walls encapsulated the city within. There were several hundred youths waiting directly in front of the city, while dozens streamed into the city every minute. An elder stood out front directly in front of the main road leading into the city, explaining the trial to any who asked for elaboration. "Do you know what this trial is?" John asked Adam. He seemed to be quite knowledgeable about the entrance exam and figured he would put his knowledge to good use. Unfortunately, the 2nd through 3rd through 4th trial changes every year, so I don't. I know the last trial has something to do with willpower, but I'm unsure of the specifics, as that too changes every year. John was slightly disappointed in being unable to find out the truth regarding the trials, but wasn't too concerned. If trial takers knew of the tests every year, they would figure out ways to game the system and beat them without being worthy of doing so. Changing the trials every year was a good way to counter this. The two of them continued to walk until they reached the lone elder, who was standing under the large archway directly at the entrance to the city. "Elder, what do we do for this trial?" John asked curiously. The elder looked at John and replied, "To pass this trial, you merely have to enter the city and leave it on the other end. This main road stretches straight to the exit, however, it won't be as simple as it sounds." John looked past the elder and into the city. The main road stretched for many miles and curved in many directions, making it impossible to look through to the other side. John was unable to see anything other than the other youths entering the city, making it appear bleak and desolate. "Okay, thanks for the information." John started to walk forward into the city, and Adam quickly scurried up behind him. Walk through a city. Such a trivial thing will never hold us two back. John rolled his eyes and continued to walk forwards. Many other youths also entered the trial in a steady stream. It won't be nearly as easy as it sounds. Before long, John entered the walled city and began to walk down the main road. The main road was a wide, dusty dirt road. Dilapidated buildings lined both sides of the road, and many narrow alleyways branched off every few dozen yards. After several minutes of walking, nothing had yet happened, causing John to frown somewhat. "Nothing yet. Sure, this city is a bit creepy, but that's it. Are they testing the nerves of us juniors?" Adam asked. He too was somewhat confused by this trial thus far. The two of them continued to walk for several more minutes, before John finally came to a stop. "What are you stopping for?" Adam asked, curious if John had sensed anything. John turned his head in every direction, looking around for something. He turned to look behind him, and a frown once more appeared on his face. "Haven't you noticed anything yet? Or more accurately, the lack of anything here but us two?" John asked Adam. Adam looked around curiously, somewhat confused by John's question. His eyes soon widened slightly as he came to a realization. "The other youths. When we entered, there were many in front of us and many behind us, but now, the only thing I can see is us two." John nodded his head at Adam's assessment of the situation. "It seems like he has some brains at least." "You're correct. Without us even realizing it, we have become isolated in this area. The other cultivators leaving this area would have drawn our attention, so something else is going on here." John continued to look around in every direction, but was unable to make heads or tails of the situation. The only thing we can do is move forward carefully and raise our guard for any unexpected situations. The two of them continued to walk forward for some time, and John eventually spotted something appear out of an alleyway ahead of them. His eyes widened slightly. "Adam, we have company," John stated, but received no response. He turned to look behind him to see why Adam had not responded. "He's gone." Chapter 148 tests within the trial without knowing how it had happened. John realized he had become separated from Adam. "I'm not too concerned about being alone, but how did he vanish without me even noticing? Just what is going on?" John spread out his divine sense as wide as it could go, but was unable to detect any other signs of life other than the creature in front of him. The creature stood directly in the middle of the road, blocking his path forward. The creature stood 10 feet tall on 6 insect-like legs, which ended in sharp blade-like tips. Its mouth was filled with razor-sharp teeth, and its body exuded a foul-smelling substance that was clearly venomous. 6 beady eyes stared at him as if he was food. Although John wasn't sure exactly what type of beast it was clearly some sort of venomous spider. Its power was at the mid-chi condensation stage, and would be a nightmare for any average mid-chi condensation cultivator. However, John was no average cultivator, and the spider in front of him gave him no concern. Something strange is going on here. First everyone disappears, and now this spider appears. Maybe we're separated into individual battle trials. Let me kill this spider and see if that solves anything. John took out his scythe and calmly walked towards the spider. The spider stared at him for a moment before opening its mouth and shooting a venomous substance at him at great speed. John quickly dashed to the side, narrowly avoiding the venom attack. The attack landed on the ground behind him and faded away. John turned his head back to where the attack had landed, and a frown appeared on his face. Several more venom attacks shot out at John, causing him to use his 5-step movement technique to rapidly dodge the attacks. He continued to study the attacks and approach the spider, and his suspicions grew as the fight dragged on. He continued to send attacks towards the spider, wearing it down slowly but surely. "I don't want to use too much chi in this fight, as I don't know what the future holds for me in these trials." Myriad Annihilation Scythe. John rapidly approached the spider and attacked out with the Myriad Annihilation Scythe. Although its power had grown quite a bit weaker in the chi condensation realm, it was more than enough to deal with the spider's weak legs. The spider cried out in pain as several of its legs were severed. It crashed to the ground and attempted to stand up, but was unable to do so. John studied the spider for a few seconds before his scythe quickly struck forward, the blade of the scythe piercing into its head. The spider struggled for a brief moment before it died. The venom of the spider was quite valuable, so John attempted to place its corpse in his palace realm. However, John was unable to do so, and the corpse remained where it was. There's definitely something strange going on in this city, although I can't say for certain what exactly. John had his suspicions of what exactly was going on, but he wanted to gather more information before he could be completely sure. Since he was unable to collect the spider's corpse, he left it in place and began to walk down the road once more. By now, John was about halfway through the city and had still not found another cultivator. He continued to walk forward when a sound of music and laughter down an alleyway to his side caught his attention. Ahem. It was the first sign of life that John had found since the spider, and so John stopped to peer down the alleyway. The alleyway extended for several dozen yards, and at the very end of it, he could make out a group laughing while playing music. The group consisted of many beautiful women, dressed in luxurious and exotic clothes. John had never seen such a group of beauties before. Harps, lyres, flutes, and more were being played in melodious harmony, causing him to nearly fall into a trance. The music was the most beautiful music he had ever heard in his life, and he felt as if his soul was being cleansed just by listening to it. The women continued to play their entrancing music, and before long noticed his presence. They all turned to look at him, and beautiful smiles appeared on their faces as they called out to him. "Hey you, come over here. Come join us. Come play with us." The women all started to call out to John, hopping to draw him over to them. Their seductive calls, along with the entrancing music, made John feel as if walking over there was the correct decision. The sect trials can wait, right? There's 7 whole days to complete the trial. Wait, no, this isn't right. John quickly snapped out of the trance he was in and backed away a few steps. Sweat trickled down his face as he stared at the women. Hugh, my mind was almost ensnared by that music. How frightful. John had felt his soul's defenses slowly erode as he listened to the music, and had nearly fallen victim to it. His soul power had flared at the last moment as he noticed himself being ensnared, which allowed him to break free from the enchanting lure. John slowly backed away and returned to the main road. The music and enchanting calls from the women continued to play out behind him, but he paid them no more attention. His mind was steeled as he continued to walk down the main road once more, this time much more careful for any traps that existed. I suppose not all traps are physical. There are traps that can target the soul itself, so I'll have to keep my eye out for that in the future. Thankfully, my soul is much stronger than the average cultivator, or I might have fallen victim to such a trap. But after all this, my suspicions are mostly confirmed. I believe that this entire city is one giant illusion formation. Chapter 149, passing the second test. John had come to this conclusion based on many things. When he first entered, him and Adam unknowingly became isolated from everyone else, which caught his attention. Then just a few minutes later, he found himself separated from Adam, who was just mere yards from him as they walked. This happened without his notice, and so there were only 2 explanations for this that he could come up with. The first was that an enemy, so powerful as to be unnoticed, swooped in and took all the other cultivators. However, this was a testing grounds, and such a thing would be worthless as a test. Also, why had he not been targeted yet? The other explanation was that there was some sort of illusion formation in the city, obscuring his vision and altering his reality. Illusion formations worked by tricking the mind into seeing and believing whatever the formation wanted them to. At a high enough level, illusion formations could be indistinguishable from reality, such as the one John experienced in the lightning trial world. In such formations, it was nearly impossible for a cultivator to see past the illusions, unless their cultivation was extremely high. This formation, however, was not nearly as profound. If it was, it would have altered his perceptions on how he became separated from everyone else, making it so that he would never realize it was a formation. Not only that, but John had an odd feeling as soon as he stepped into the city, as if his soul was being slowly invaded by an outside force. It was so minuscule as to be ignored as his imagination, but the feeling was there nonetheless. I'm sure the heavenly lightning sect could set up an illusion formation that is so powerful as to trick all those who enter, but that would defeat the purpose of it being a test. If I'm not mistaken, this is a trial to test the soul and willpower of all the youths. The first trial tested essence chi power and natural talent, while this trial is testing willpower and soul strength. Only those will have strong enough souls to see through the illusions, or strong enough wills to stick on the forward path despite all the obstacles and allures will pass. I'm sure everyone sees something different. The first trial was the massive spider, whose power was a match for John's cultivation-wise. Since beasts were normally stronger than cultivators in the same realm, this was a test for nerves and bravery. Only those willing to take the battle head-on and move forward could advance, while the cowards who were too afraid to risk their lives in battle would be eliminated. The next trial was with the alluring music and women. This was a test for his ability to resist temptation. I'm guessing I was able to see through this formation due to my encounter with the one in the lightning world, as well as my strong soul strength. Most of the youths want see through this formation, which will make it quite the challenge to pass. Only those with the strongest of wills can trudge through the obstacles to make it through to the end. Now that John had seen through the formation, it had lost its potency. He could ignore all the future obstacles and walk directly to the end, knowing that it was only an illusion before him. After concluding all this, John set out down the path once more, much less concerned about this trial. Although his guard was still raised in the chance that he was wrong about the test, he walked forward unflinchingly. Several more illusions appeared before him, each with their own obstacle and allure. One mysterious and powerful cultivator appeared before him, offering him immense wealth, should he become a member of their sect and spy on the heavenly lightning sect. John ignored the man and walked right through him, confirming his suspicions as fact. A little while later, profound treasures appeared down another alleyway. Their powerful fluctuations would affect most cultivators, but John ignored them and continued to walk. Similar things continued to happen, until John finally saw the exit at the end of the road. The exit was framed by an archway similar to the one at the entrance, and John walked calmly towards its exit. Before long, he left the ancient city and breathed in a breath of fresh air. "Being out of that formation feels nice," John mumbled out loud. He felt as if his breath was stifled in there, always being under the influence of the formation. "I know, right? That formation was a pain in the ass to see through, but it couldn't keep a brilliant man like me blind for too long," a voice behind him replied, causing John to turn around quickly. Adam stood behind John, clearly having just left the ancient city just moments after him. John raised his eyebrows slightly in surprise at Adam's arrival, which had only been a hair later than him. Adam noticed John's surprised look and puffed out his chest in pride. "I told you, didn't I? I'm a formations expert. Such a measly formation couldn't obscure my eyes for too long." John nodded his head at Adam's words, but still took some time to believe it. He had expected Adam to be a bumbling fool based on his actions in the first trial, but maybe he actually is a talented formations expert. With my powerful soul and strong will, I'm sure I have one of the fastest clearing times for this trial out of all the participants, but Adam finished just a hair later than me. It seems like having him as a follower might be worthwhile. John didn't dislike having people around him, but his desire for strength triumphed all other emotions. However, having strong followers would aid in his quest for strength, and John was not opposed to such an idea. John walked forward and patted Adam on the shoulder in an approving manner. A smile appeared on his face as he spoke to him. "Not bad, truly. It seems you do have talent as a formations expert. I've decided to accept your offer. You are my first official follower." John felt somewhat awkward saying those words, as if he was doing Adam an immense favor by allowing Adam to follow him, but based on what he had seen so far from Adam's personality, John was sure that this was exactly the type of response he was looking for. Adam's face quickly beamed into one of unbridled pride. His nose stuck high into the sky as he patted John on the shoulder in a similar manner. "I knew my brilliance would be seen by you sooner than later. I'll humbly accept your offer." John stared at Adam for a moment before turning around and continuing on the path to the third trial. Dealing with Adam is going to be a willpower test on its own, isn't? 150. Start of the third test, John was unsure of what exactly he was getting into by allowing Adam to follow him, but he was sure it was going to cause many headaches in the future. However, he could tell that Adam was a sincere person through all his embellishments, and so John had a good impression of him. Also, if Adam truly turned out to be a formations expert, that would be invaluable in the future, and John would not pass up on such a thing. The two of them followed the path out of the city, which pierced into the nearby forest. Just like last time, the pathway was lined with beautiful trees in full bloom. Flowers of every color appeared all around, and the gentle wind nudged some of the blossoms off the trees, creating a mesmerizing rainfall of flowers. Many tranquil streams of blue-colored water flowed by. Beautiful bridges with intricate craftsmanship crossed over each stream, and numerous types of fish were seen swimming in the streams below. "This sect sure is beautiful," Adam commented. John nodded his head in agreement. "It truly is, and the main sect grounds are even more so," John replied. "You've seen the main sect grounds?" Adam asked in surprise. Yep, I've had a unique relationship with the Heavenly Lightning sect for the past few months, although I'm still required to take the entrance exam like everyone else. Well, that makes sense. I heard that there's some sort of ritual or baptism for all who wish to enter the sect, and that it takes place once a year. Without this baptism, no one can enter the sect officially, Adam replied, causing John to come to an understanding of why he was unable to directly join the sect. I wonder what type of ritual is so important as to be the main requirement for joining the sect. John pushed these thoughts aside, as the truth would soon reveal itself. The two of them continued to walk down the scenic path for some time before they once more came to a clearing in the forest. Their eyebrows raised slightly at the sight before them. A massive four-sided pagoda, several hundred yards wide and nearly 1,000 yards tall, stood before them. Its walls were painted dark gray, and it exhibited the same detailed level of craftsmanship as the rest of the sect grounds. Intricate red eaves jutted out of the building every dozen yards, revealing that the tower had many floors. Dozens of doors existed at the bottom of the tower. A crowd had gathered before the trial, and there was a line formed in front of each of the many doors. Although John and Adam had cleared the second trial extremely fast, they had been in the middle of the pack during the first trial, and many had started the second trial before them. An elder stood at the very front of the building and sat there with his eyes closed, as if the trial had nothing to do with him. John and Adam walked forward to the crowd and joined one of the lines. "Excuse me, do you know what type of test this trial is?" John asked the girl in front of him. The girl had long brown hair and was quite tall for her age, nearly the same height as John. She wore exotic-looking leather armor, making her look like a battle barbarian. She turned around, and her hawk-like eyes inspected both John and Adam before responding. "No one really knows. The elder in front of the building instructed us to form lines in front of the door and wait for it to light up before entering one by one." "Thanks," John replied. It seemed like he would have to enter the trail to figure out what type of test it was. The line gradually moved forward, with each door lighting up in various time increments, indicating that not everyone passed or failed the trial in the same amount of time. John had his suspicions regarding the trial, but wasn't sure enough to make any concrete guesses yet. "What type of test do you think it will be?" Adam asked John curiously. "I can't say for sure, but this is the trial that decides if one becomes a sect disciple or not. Our essence, chi, and talent, as well as our soul and perceptions, have been tested already. I doubt there will be a body test, as the Heavenly Lightning sect is an essence chi-based sect, so I think it will be some sort of combat test," John replied. Adam thought about it for a moment. That sounds plausible. It wouldn't make sense to permit entry to those who aren't at least somewhat combat capable, as the sect is primarily a combat-based sect, Adam agreed. John had expected Adam to be slightly nervous at his guess, given that he was a formations expert and not a combat expert. "Aren't you slightly concerned if it is a combat test? Your essence chi barely passed the first test," John asked curiously. Adam smiled proudly, and a small object appeared in his hands. It was a circular object roughly 6 inches across and 1 inch thick, and many runes were engraved on its surface. "Not to fear, I have plenty of these killing formations, specifically for a test such as this," Adam replied with a confident tone. Killing formation. Didn't the vice sect leader say no outside treasure are allowed? Adam smiled proudly once more, his chest puffed out as he responded. "No outside treasures, yes, but we are allowed to use treasures or formations we've personally made ourselves, and these killing formations have been made by me personally." John inspected the formation disc once more. As he studied it closer, he could tell that the craftsmanship of the runes on its surface was much less profound than any of the other runes he had seen before, as if crafted by an amateur. "I suppose it makes sense that it's this shoddy, given that he's only started out on the formation path. I just hope it's enough to pass the test, or him being my follower is all for naught." The two of them continued to talk as the line slowly but surely crept forward, until John watched the barbarian-like woman enter the door. He waited in line for nearly 30 minutes before the door once more lit up, signaling that it was his turn to enter. "You're up next. Good luck once inside, although I'm sure you won't need it," Adam stated while giving John a thumbs up. John nodded towards Adam. "Good luck yourself. Don't let me down after I've officially accepted you as a follower," John stated, trying to give Adam some extra motivation. He knew Adam was a prideful person, and such a statement would only increase his desire to prove his worth. "Don't worry. A sect such as the Heavenly Lightning Sect can't hinder a great man such as myself." John shook his head and walked forward. He entered the door of light without pausing, and immediately found himself inside a large room 100 yards wide and tall. The stone walls were light gray, and various light formations lit up the entire room. Just as John was about to question what type of test this truly was, he heard a voice fill the room. "Fight for as long as you can." Roar. A loud roar echoed throughout the room, and John found himself face to face with a profound beast that had appeared out of thin air. Chapter 151, Battling Golden Mane Lions. A profound beast appeared in front of John, and had materialized out of nowhere, most likely the work of some formation. However, unlike the illusion formation, this beast was corporeal and was able to cause real damage. A golden mane lion. It appeared out of nowhere, so I'm guessing it's a formation instead of it being an actual lion, although the strength should be the same. The lion in front of John was a golden mane lion, which was nearly 6 feet tall and 15 feet long from head to tail. It had a large golden mane, which gave it its name, as well as razor-sharp claws jutting from each of its paws. Its mouth was larger than John's head, and many sharp teeth jutted from its mouth. Its power was at the early chi condensation realm, which caused John to frown somewhat. He had been hopping for a good fight, but the lion was far too weak to provide that. "It said to fight as long as I can, so I'm guessing that as soon as I defeat it, another beast will take its place. Let's test it out." The lion roared and pounced towards John, at which point he took out his scythe. Although he could easily defeat the animal barehanded, he was sure that strength preservation was more important than having a good fight during a test. The lion rapidly approached John, and its powerful claw swung out towards him. John quickly dodged to the side, easily avoiding the attack. Thanks to his powerful body, as well as opening the limit of speed in his body, John's natural movement speed was nearly equivalent to a movement technique on its own. If the Supreme Battle Art and Immortal Asura Transformation Art were thrown in on top of that, his speed would be incredibly terrifying. Slice. Before the lion could react, a black scythe rapidly sliced towards its outstretched claw, severing it from the rest of its body. Roar. The lion roared out in pain and tried to back up, but quickly stumbled to the ground due to its missing limb. John seized the moment and dashed forward quickly. His scythe blade came vertically down towards the lion's head and pierced its skull before it could react. The lion twitched for a moment before it collapsed. After dying, its body slowly dissipated into thin air, revealing that it was indeed a beast created by a formation and not a real one. "Surely that's not all," John remarked. Just as he spoke up, light flashed within the large room, and 3 more golden mane lions appeared. They were each identical to the first one, and their powerful roars reverberated throughout the room. "More of you? Give me something a bit more challenging," John mumbled before dashing directly into the midst of the lions. Despite being 3 in number, their power was far beneath his notice. Just like the first lion, the 3 lions were defeated and killed in short order, without John having to utilize his most powerful techniques. Just his body alone was strong enough to make short work of the 3 lions. The bodies dissipated, and another flash of light filled the room. John's eyes lit up slightly as he stared at the beast that had just appeared. It was another golden mane lion, however. "This one is in the mid-chi condensation realm. That's more like it." A smile appeared on John's face as he stomped down on the ground and rapidly dashed towards the lion. Only something in his realm could make him slightly feel the thrill of battle, although even then it was just slightly. The lion roared at John before it too dashed towards him, unleashing a powerful claw attack. Boom! Scythe and claws collided, and both the lion and John were knocked back slightly. It has a much stronger defense than the previous lions. John's scythe slashed forward once more, aiming for the lion's neck. The lion quickly raised its paw once more and successfully parried the attack. John suddenly let go of his scythe and dashed past the lion's outstretched claw. The lion had been expecting John to pull his scythe back and unleash another attack, but the boy had appeared directly before its chest before it could react. A powerful fist sailed forward, directly colliding with the front chest of the lion. Boom! A loud boom echoed out, and the sound of cracking ribs echoed throughout the room as the lion was knocked back dozens of yards. John used his essence chi to quickly suction his scythe back into his hands before he dashed forward as quickly as he could. Bang! A scythe collided with the back of the still tumbling lion, piercing deep into its body. Roar! The lion roared out in pain as the scythe carved a deep wound several feet long and deep into its back. Blood flowed out profusely as John once more struck out several more times at the lion. Some of the attacks were blocked at the last moment, but most landed directly on the body of the lion, causing its body to become more and more gruesome. Before long, the lion collapsed on the ground, and its body dissipated soon after. Before long, 3 flashes of light filled the room, and 3 more lions appeared in front of John. Each of them were mid-chi condensation beasts. A small smile appeared on John's face once more. That's more like it. Chapter 152. A bet amongst elders in a separate room in the large tower, dozens of elders were gathered around a large formation. The formation projected the images of what was happening in each room, showing the elders how each fighter was doing. Most of the eyes were glued to one particular screen, including those of Elder Ragger. The group had just watched John easily defeat the early chi condensation lions, before defeating the mid-chi condensation lion in impressive fashion as well. This boy you found is truly not bad, Elder Ragger. He was able to defeat that mid-chi condensation lion fairly easily, which is the limit for most of those who pass this test, one elder commented. True, he shows quite some promise. His battle instincts are incredibly sharp, and he's able to grasp every opportunity without hesitation. Not only that, but his body is quite amazing as well. Just a single punch was able to crack the ribs of the lion, another elder commented. Many of the surrounding elders nodded their heads in agreement with the words just spoken. John had truly shown impressive battle instincts, such as when he dropped his scythe to land a fist blow on the lion. Most cultivators thought that letting go of their weapon was suicide in battle, but John was able to land a vicious blow by doing just that, showing that his instincts triumphed over common logic. He's also able to dictate the flow of battle incredibly well and never lets go of the initiative. This is something we normally have to beat into our disciples before they can fully understand it. I can see why he caught your eye, Elder Ragger. Elder Ragger stood there watching the screen of John's room with a beaming smile. So far, John had met his expectations, and he was looking forward to how John was about to deal with the next trial. HMPH, so what? A voice suddenly spoke up, causing all those nearby to look towards its source. A frown appeared on his face as Elder Ragger looked towards the source of the voice as well, but already knew who it was before he looked. Elder Harn, do you have something to say? Elder Ragger asked, keeping his tone as civil as possible. Sure, his battle instincts are impressive, and his body is powerful, but he's shown nothing impressive other than that. He's shown no impressive battle arts yet, and his overall combat prowess caps out at this stage if you ask me. If that's all he has to go on, then I'm afraid he will fall during this next battle against the 3 mid-chi condensation beasts, Elder Harn stated out loud in a confident tone. The nearby elders remained silent on the matter, as they knew the antagonistic relationship Elder Ragger and Elder Harn had. Elder Ragger frowned for a moment before a smile broke out on his face. Then, would you like to make a wager on John's performance? A smile appeared on Elder Harn's face as well, as if he had been expecting such a question. "Sure, since you propose the bet, you make the conditions." Elder Ragger thought about it for a moment. The words of the elder who had watched over John for 3 months echoed in his mind. His battle prowess is terrifying. Although he had never seen John fight at full strength, he trusted the judgment of that elder. Also, the attack John had sent out in the enforcement halls was incredibly powerful as well, and had not been used yet. He smiled towards Elder Harn and spoke up. "I bet that John makes it to the next stage of this trial, and not only that, but lasts for at least 5 minutes. And I bet 10,000 spirit stones." The elders in the room all had looks of surprise appear on their faces. Clearly, Elder Ragger had incredible confidence in John's battle prowess. Elder Harn had a look of surprise appear on his face before he broke out in a hearty laughter. 5 minutes and 10,000 spirit stones. Are you serious? That would place him in the top 5 for talent out of the tens of thousands of juniors participating. Fine, I'll gladly take you up on that offer. Elder Ragger smiled, and paid Elder Harn gave him no more attention. His gaze returned to the formation and watched the screen depicting John's battle. Back in the room, John was in the midst of fighting the 3 golden mane lions. Many small wounds were opened up on his body as he dashed in between the 3 lions, narrowly avoiding their attacks and lashing out with his own. However, the damage to the lions was also superficial. Many of the watching elders noticed his struggle to inflict any damage and figured this was the end of the road for him. Only Elder Ragger had a look of confidence on his face. "I suppose fighting 3 mid-chi condensation beasts with just the power of my body alone is a bit too much. I suppose it's time to kick it up a notch." John suddenly stopped, causing many of the elders to believe that he was about to give up. A smile appeared on Elder Harn's face, and he was just about to speak up in a mocking tone when... Supreme Battle Art. An incredibly powerful aura exploded off John's body, causing the nearby air to ripple under its power. John's robes violently fluttered about under the powerful aura, and all the elders watching had a stupefied look on their faces, Elder Ragger included. How does he know that technique? Is he a disciple of the Supreme Battle Sect?" one elder asked in confusion. The Supreme Battle Art was the signature battle art of the Supreme Battle Sect, and only disciples could know it. He's a disciple of the Supreme Battle Sect. "Do you want to explain what's going on here, Elder Ragger?" Elder Harn asked in a raised voice. Clearly this was outside of his expectations. Elder Ragger remained silent for a moment, as he was just as surprised as the rest of them. However, he quickly maintained his composure. "We've already done a thorough background check on John. He is from a small clan located at the coast, and is not a disciple of the Supreme Battle Sect. However, I am unsure of how he came to learn such a technique." Heated discussions quickly broke out amongst the elders, discussing this unforeseen event. With the power of the Supreme Battle Art, John defeated the 3 mid-chi condensation lions after several minutes of intense battle. His breathing was heavy, and there were a few small wounds on his body, but his power was still at its peak. Their bodies dissipated, and John figured the test was at an end before another flash of light appeared in his vision. Roar! The roar echoed throughout the room, and John could feel his bones rattle from the power of the roar. He stared at the newcomer, and eyes lit up in happiness. "A late chi condensation golden lion. Finally, a good battle has arrived." Chapter 153. Stunning the elders once more, it was considered common knowledge that fighting above your realm and killing such an opponent was almost impossible. Even a minor realm increase was no exception. While there were geniuses that were able to contest against an opponent above their realm and fight evenly, almost none of them were able to defeat or kill those opponents. Defeating an opponent was 10 times harder than fighting evenly against one. As such, the final fight of the 3rd trial was against an opponent a minor realm above each cultivator. For cultivators at the peak of the chi condensation realm, they would have to fight a half-step core formation beast, which was not quite core formation yet, but stronger than a late chi condensation expert. Since John was in the mid-chi condensation realm, he was situated against a late chi condensation beast. In the heavenly lightning sect forest that he had spent the last 3 months in, John had fought hundreds of chi condensation beasts. Most were early chi condensation beasts, but there were many mid-chi condensation beasts that he fought when he was in the early chi condensation realm for both body and essence cultivation. With the help of the divine reaping scythe, supreme battle art, and immortal Asura transformation art, John was able to defeat these mid-chi condensation beasts, doing what most considered impossible. He had managed to barely break through to the mid-chi condensation realm days before the entrance exam, which drastically increased his power. However, due to running out of human blood essence, John's body cultivation was still at the early chi condensation realm. As such, fighting the late chi condensation beast was going to be much harder than his fights before, due to his body cultivation being 2 whole minor realms below the lion's power. This is going to be a lot harder than the fights in the forest, but I still think I should be able to manage. However, I really need to figure out this human blood essence situation soon. A pitch-black scythe reappeared in John's hands, and its several hundred pounds of weight wasn't even enough to cause his body to sink down slightly. A small frown appeared on John's face as he inspected the weapon in his hands. Small chips were visible on the scythe blade. This weapon is starting to become obsolete. Not only is its weight too low for me to fully utilize the strength of my body, but it's also starting to show wear, affecting its performance. I'll need to get a new weapon after this exam. There were a few things John had on his list to upgrade after the exam. The first was his scythe, but he also needed new techniques, such as a movement technique and essence attacks. His body, with his limit of speed unleashed, was incredibly fast, but an essence movement technique on top of that would make his speed incredible. Also, his only essence attack of note right now is the divine reaping scythe, but it was incredibly strenuous on his essence chi, and he could only unleash it a few times before running out of essence chi. John snapped out of his thoughts and looked up towards the golden mane lion that was rapidly approaching him. Unlike the last fights, the power of the lion was enough to threaten his life if he wasn't careful. I could stall the battle out by using the supreme battle art and divine reaping scythe and slowly wear it down, but since it's a beast created by a formation, I don't think stamina is an issue for it. As such, only brute force and overwhelming power will result in victory. Supreme battle art. An explosive aura once again radiated outwards from John's body, causing his robes and hair to billow as if in a heavy wind. His aura kept climbing until it reached its peak state. The lion quickly reached John, sending out a powerful claw attack. Its power was several times stronger than the previous lion's claw attacks, and John didn't care to look down on it. Boom! Scythe and claw collided, and John was knocked back dozens of yards, while the lion was only knocked back 2 yards. John felt as if a mountain had just struck him, and his arms rattled from the force of the impact, and a small amount of blood escaped from his lips. Haha, seems like this is the end of the road for your boy. I will admit he's quite impressive, but that 5-minute mark is starting to seem quite far away for him. I'll graciously accept your 10,000 spirit stone donation, Elder Harn said to Elder Ragger in a mocking tone. Elder Ragger frowned at the words said to him, but didn't respond. His eyes stayed glued to the formation screens. He knew John still had more in the tank and was looking forward to the fight to come. Elder Harn was still gloating about his soon-to-be-acquired wealth and was just about to make another snide comment when all of a sudden his words caught in his throat. Him, as well as every other elder in the room, had their eyes glued to the screen in a disbelieving fashion. After being knocked back by the lion, John knew he was just wasting time by fighting at his current strength. I think it's about time to go all out. Let me end this as fast as possible. As the lion once again charged directly towards John, his already impressive battle aura began to rapidly rise once more, and his eyes began to slowly turn color. Before long, His eyes were completely red in color, and his pupils had become vertical, like the pupils of a snake. While using the supreme battle art, his battle aura was like that of a powerful battle lord. However, his battle aura had completely changed in the blink of an eye, and all the elders watching felt as if they were staring at a bloodthirsty demon god. Not only was the power he was revealing much stronger than anything a mid-chi condensation cultivator should have, the very nature of that power chilled every elder to their core. Chapter 154. Fighting the late chi condensation lion, John relished in the power and nature of the aura he was emitting for a short moment. The power he felt as he unleashed the Immortal Asura transformation art was intoxicating, and he couldn't get enough of it. However, the strain it put on his body was immense, and John knew he wouldn't be able to fight for more than a minute or two before the technique would end. A smile appeared on his face as he stared at the rapidly approaching lion, and John kicked off the ground violently and dashed forward. The solid stone floor trembled greatly from the force of his stride. Boom! Scythe and claw collided once more, and both John and the lion were knocked back ever so slightly, revealing equal amounts of strength. Not bad, again. John unleashed his body's strength to his fullest and dashed forward once more. Scythe and claws collided over and over, causing the room to tremble from the force of the collisions. John slowly but surely started to gain a small advantage over the lion. However, his arms were shaking greatly from the force of the collisions, and his body was slowly but surely starting to take damage from both the lion and the Immortal Asura transformation art. Blood began to flow from the lion's paws, and it quickly dashed backwards, narrowly dodging one of his scythe attacks. It opened its mouth, and an incredibly powerful ball of chi began to gather, before it shot out in a powerful beam directly towards John. The air rippled as the beam cut directly towards John. Ahem. John had never seen a beast use such a move before, as all the beasts he fought before had used their bodies. This was the first time he had seen a beast use a chi attack. However, his face remained calm as he stared at the approaching attack. Boom! John narrowly managed to dodge the attack, and the attack exploded violently against the wall of the room far behind him. The explosion of chi radiated outwards and washed over him from behind, causing John to lose his balance slightly. The lion seized this opportunity and unleashed another powerful chi attack towards John. Dodging these attacks in such a small room is just going to cause more of a headache than taking them head-on. In that case, John suddenly raised his scythe above his head, and it began to glow powerfully in an ominous color. Divine Reaping Scythe. He swung down with all his might and sent out the Divine Reaping Scythe towards the chi attack. An incredibly sharp and powerful scythe image of black and red chi cut directly towards the lion's attack, and the two attacks collided in midair. John's face paled slightly as he felt his essence chi reserves drop by over a third. The Divine Reaping Scythe cleaved the lion's chi attack in two, causing the two halves to lose some power and branch off to each side of him. Boom! The two halves of the chi attack collided against the wall behind him once more, but their diminished power didn't cause a problem for John this time around. The Divine Reaping Scythe cleaved directly into the lion's chi attack and continued to sail forth rapidly without losing much power at all. The technique focused on unleashing an incredibly fast and sharp scythe image, and was much more profound than the attack unleashed by the lion. Slice. The attack landed on the lion's front chest before it could even react. A large wound deep enough to see bones opened up on the lion, and blood began to flow out. Roar. The lion roared in pain and sent out another chi attack towards John. He was already prepared for such an attack, and had started channeling his Divine Reaping Scythe once more. Even if I land another attack like that, it still won't be enough to kill it. I need to unleash this attack directly. Much like the Myriad Annihilation Scythe, the Divine Reaping Scythe was at its most powerful state when concentrated on the scythe blade itself. Essence Chi cultivators fought at range, and so they would send out the attack at range like John just had. Fighting up close against a beast an entire minor realm above them would be tantamount to suicide, as one landed attack from the lion would be able to threaten their lives. However, John had his powerful body to ensure his safety up close against the lion, and so decided to unleash the divine reaping scythe directly with the scythe itself. John stared at the approaching chi attack and dodged it at the last moment before kicking off the ground with all his strength. He rapidly approached the lion, and his scythe swung down just as he reached it. The lion roared once more at his counterattack, and it once again opened its mouth to send out a powerful chi attack directly towards him in an effort to deter John's attack. The lion felt its immense power and knew it would be a fatal attack if it landed on its body. HMPH, I've already traded blows against an opponent a realm above me before, and I'll do it again. Just like when he fought the stalking mantis assassin, John was once again fully willing to trade blows to kill the lion. Unlike last time, however, John had greatly increased the defensive power of his body by unleashing the Immortal Asura transformation art, which gave him much greater confidence in surviving without life-threatening injuries. John swung down with his scythe and met the lion's chi attack head-on. His scythe directly carved through the chi beam, while the remaining power of the lion's attack landed directly on his body. John grit his teeth in pain as the attack sheared flesh directly off his body, exposing muscle and bone, but continued unflinchingly with his attack. Slice. His divine reaping scythe carved directly through the lion's attack and reached it before it could react. The scythe's blade smashed directly against the lion's skull, and after a brief moment of struggle cleaved into its head. The lion's skull was directly cleaved in two, and its body collapsed lifelessly to the floor. John stared at the lifeless lion's corpse before it slowly began to dissipate. His aura rapidly faded, and he once again returned to his normal state. His breathing was incredibly heavy and his face pale, as he had just used the Immortal Asura transformation art as well as 2 divine reaping scythes. He had also taken the lion's powerful attack directly head-on, resulting in serious wounds all over his body. Pain and fatigue washed over him, and John collapsed on the floor, struggling to maintain his consciousness. Chapter 155, Recuperating What? What just happened? An elder in the formations room commented, but received no reply. The elders had all been watching and discussing the various fights, with most of their eyes glued to the room John was fighting in. He had shown some promise in his initial fights, and the bet between the 2 elders spiced up the otherwise mundane watching experience. After his initial collisions with the golden mane lion, many of the elders guessed that Elder Harn was correct, and that John would not last 5 minutes against it. However, his aura and power had unexpectedly exploded to a level well beyond what a mid-chi condensation cultivator should be capable of, and he had also shown off an immensely profound and powerful scythe battle art. These 2 things allowed him to not only fight against the beast, but actually slay it. None of the elders had expected such a thing, and all had been stunned into silence. Elder Harn stood there with an incredibly sour expression on his face. He wanted to accuse the boy of cheating somehow, but he knew that was impossible. The power was clearly the boy's own power, and doing such a thing would only disgrace himself. Elder Ragger stood there in equally stunned silence. His initial estimate of John lasting 5 minutes against the beast was a bet of passion in the moment, and even he was unsure if John would be able to last that long. However, John's performance far exceeded his expectations. His stunned silence soon turned to happiness. "I'll collect those spirit stones later, so be sure to gather them for me." Elder Ragger turned to the still silent Elder Harn and spoke out, before his figure suddenly vanished. John laid on the floor for several moments before he finally managed to climb back on his feet. His stance was unsteady and his breathing incredibly heavy, but as long as he maintained consciousness, John was unwilling to lie on the floor like that. After regaining his composure, John inspected his body and let out a sigh of relief. "Although I have some pretty nasty wounds from taking that last attack head-on, none of it is life-threatening. I'm mostly just exhausted from using the divine reaping scythe on top of the Immortal Asura transformation art. However, these wounds are going to take quite some time to heal, and the life mist healing pills I have are only really good for healing mist creation cultivators. Although it was ineffective for his cultivation, a life mist healing pill still appeared in John's hands. This is my last one. From his battles in the pocket realm, as well as the ancient forest, John had used up all his healing pills. After I'm done with this entrance exam, one of the first things I should do is get a new batch of more effective healing pills. John raised the pill to his mouth and was about to swallow it when a voice behind him suddenly spoke out. "That won't be necessary." John quickly turned around and was greeted by a familiar figure. Elder Ragger stood there inspecting John's condition, while a satisfied smile hung on his face. "You really do manage to give me surprise after surprise," Elder Ragger stated in a happy tone, his satisfaction with John's performance evident. John had first given him a surprise with his lightning attribute body, then his revealing of his innate variant body. Now, he had revealed his incredible combat prowess, shocking the Elder once more. A small pouch appeared in Elder Ragger's hands, and he threw it over towards John before he could respond. John caught the pouch and quickly inspected the contents inside. A deep medicinal fragrance emanated from the pouch, and John felt his body become refreshed just from smelling its contents. "Those are spirit grass healing pills, which are very effective for chi condensation cultivators," Elder Ragger said as he watched John inspect the pills closely. John could feel a vibrant medicinal aura emanating from the pills. It was much better than his life mist healing pills. "Good stuff, thanks," John replied without standing on courtesy. He took out one pill while storing the rest in his spatial ring. The pill was slightly bitter, but as soon as the pill entered his stomach, John could feel the gentle yet powerful healing properties of the pills circulate throughout his body. Before long, John could see his superficial wounds begin to slowly heal before his eyes. His body began to feel lighter, and his pain began to slowly subside. The light wounds should be healed within the hour, while the heavier wounds will take about a day. "You're in luck, though. The next trial only starts once all the participants have either failed or passed the third trial, which should happen in about a day or so," Elder Ragger said with a smile on his face. He was in an incredibly good mood, as he had just won 10,000 spirit stones from Elder Harn. Not only that, but John's talent was beyond his expectations, and the more talented he was, the more benefits he would receive from having brought such a talent to the sect. After healing his lighter wounds, John followed Elder Ragger out of the room while discussing the test that he had just taken. Later that night, John sat in a small room and focused on healing his body and recovering his peak strength. After the third trial had been completed, Elder Ragger escorted John to where the fourth trial would take place. It was a massive circular building, hundreds of yards wide and several dozen yards tall, and was painted pitch black, giving off an ominous feeling. Outside of the building, hundreds of small cottages were available to rest in. After explaining that the next trial would start in a day, Elder Ragger left, leaving John to himself. John entered one of the small cottages and began to recuperate. "I'm not sure what the next test will be, but I need to make sure I'm at my peak state for it." John closed his eyes and focused on guiding the medicinal properties of the spurtgrass healing pill through his body, slowly healing the remaining wounds. He also focused on restoring his essence chi reserves, and before long, it was back to being full. "I have plenty of beast blood essence, so I won't have to worry about obtaining more for quite some time. I wonder how Adam did in the third trial." After healing to full, John decided to leave his small cottage and take a walk outside and see if he could find Adam. He stood up and opened the door, and a look of disbelief appeared on his face. "John, help me." Chapter 156, Trial of Pain. On the small staircase leading to the cottage, Adam was lying there on his stomach, acting as if he was dying. John quickly rushed forward towards Adam to inspect him, but found no obvious wounds or reason for him lying on the ground. "Are you all right? What happened?" John asked, thinking that perhaps the wounds were internal. Adam dramatically turned over to lie on his back, and a look of anguish appeared on his face. John was just about to ask what was wrong once more, when a loud growl escaped Adam's stomach. I'm so hungry. Bang! John punched Adam directly on his chest, causing him to shriek out in pain. What the fuck are you doing? Adam shouted out and hurriedly stood up while rubbing the spot that John had just punched. Although John hadn't punched that hard, it still hurt quite a bit. That's what I should be asking. Why are you acting like you're dying when you're just hungry? John shouted out. Adam's rage quickly subsided, and his face once more appeared to his normal prideful look. I was just testing you to see if you were a good friend, but it turns out you're a lousy friend. Who punches a friend in need? Adam stated in a condescending tone, as if John was the one who faulted him. John stared at Adam in disbelief for a moment before silently turning, preparing to walk back into the cottage. Wait, I was joking, Adam hurriedly stated. Another growl escaped his stomach, and a look of embarrassment appeared on his face, causing John to be slightly surprised. It was the first time he had seen Adam with any type of look but undeserved pride. So you do know how to be embarrassed, John stated bluntly, causing Adam to blush once more. Ooh, I forgot to pack food before leaving for this entrance exam. Would you happen to have any spare food? Adam asked while rubbing the back of his head. John looked at Adam as if he were an idiot. Even though they could go much longer without food and water than normal mortals, cultivators still had to eat and drink. Only once one ascended to the heaven tribulation realm and shed their mortal body would a cultivator be able to go without food and drink indefinitely, thriving on only the chi in the air itself. After a moment of silence, John walked back into his cottage, causing a look of disappointment to appear on Adam's face. You can enter, I have plenty of food, John stated without turning around, causing Adam's look of disappointment to vanish. He hurriedly followed John into his cottage. The two of them ate while talking of their experience in the third trial. I managed to kill the late chi condensation golden mane lion, and my formations dominated it without it being able to resist them slightly. You see, I told you I'm a formation genius, but I ran out of killing formations while fighting the 3 lions and was unable to pass. If only I had made more, I would have slaughtered them mercilessly, Adam stated, telling the story of his time inside the third trial. It seems like killing a beast in the same realm is the requirement for passing the third test, John thought, while listening to Adam describe his battle in an embellished manner. Adam's cultivation was at the late chi condensation realm, and so he had to defeat the late chi condensation lion to pass the trial. After spending quite some time describing his heroics within the third trial, Adam paused for a breath before asking John about how his trial went. I managed to kill a late chi condensation beast, John stated bluntly, before taking another bite of the meat in his hands, not bothering to embellish any details. Adam's eyes widened in surprise, and he took a moment to respond. Wow, and I thought I was a braggart, but even I wouldn't have the lack of shame required to lie about killing a beast above my cultivation realm. How did you really do? Adam refused to believe John's words, and John didn't feel the need to make him believe them. I did what I said I did. You can believe my words if you want to or not. It makes no difference to me. Adam stared at John in a disbelieving fashion, but commented no further. The two of them continued to eat and discuss various things through the night, and before long, the start of the next trial came. Early the next morning, a crowd of several thousand youths gathered in front of the massive circular building. John and Adam stood amongst the crowd, waiting for the elders in charge to describe the next trial. I guess you were right. There were tens of thousands of youths that entered this entrance exam, and only several thousand remain, John said to Adam as he looked around the crowd. Adam has stated that the failure rate for entering the sect was roughly 85%, and it seemed as if his guess was correct. Passing the third trial was required to enter the sect, and all those gathered here had done so. However, passing the third trial was the requirement to join as an outer disciple, and no one wanted to settle for just that. Every youth present was eager for the start of the fourth trial, and the chance to prove their worth to the heavenly lightning sect. Before long, an elder walked in front of the massive crowd and spoke up in a loud voice. "Congratulations for passing the third trial. You have proven that you're the elite of this land and are worthy of entering the heavenly lightning sect. However, there are more trials to come, and you all have only joined as an outer disciple so far. To advance further, you will need to pass the next trial." Excited discussions broke out among the crowd, and the elder waved his hand, asking for silence. The crowd eventually quieted down, at which point the elder continued. "The journeys of cultivators are not easy. Only those with the firmest of wills are able to walk down the path and achieve heights others can only dream of. As such, the next trial will test your will, your resolve, and your determination. The next trial is the trial of pain." Chapter 157, fearful youths' hushed murmurs immediately broke out throughout the crowd of several thousand youths. The faces of most of the youths paled slightly at the name of the trial, and many started to break down nervously. All the youths remaining were the elite youths of the Yuan Continent. Other than the four great sects, each of these youths came from powers that stood at the top of the Yuan Continent. Most of these youths were pampered their entire lives and enjoyed a life of luxury and pomp. They were given the best cultivation resources and were allowed to grow in a controlled environment. They rarely felt pain, and such a thing was almost unthinkable for their elevated lifestyles. However, the Heavenly Lightning sect was one of the four great sects, and they wouldn't allow pampered youths to become inner disciples. While most of the youths had looks of anxiousness or fear on their faces, some looked completely relaxed. Clearly, they had a rougher upbringing and were unafraid of a little bit of pain. John's head swiveled about, curious as to what reactions were going on in the crowd. He observed many of the anxious and fearful faces, and a few who were completely at calm. At the front of the crowd, the five most prominent youths stood once more. Mason, Russell, and June each had calm looks on their face, showing that they were unmoved by such a trial. Mee had a look of slight worry, as she detested feeling pain, while Hartley had a look of disgust on his face. "Ugh, trial of pain. My magnificent golden robes are going to get dirty, aren't they?" Hartley Randall scoffed, unhappy with the trial to come. The prince clearly placed great importance on his clean outward appearance. Next to him, Mee nodded her head timidly in agreement. "Haha, what's there to worry about? It's just a bit of pain. If you can't handle that, you don't deserve to call yourself a cultivator," Russell shouted out enthusiastically. Clearly, he was looking forward to such a trial and had great confidence in doing well. John looked towards the five of them as they spoke up, before turning to Adam at his side. "What do you think of this trial?" John's words stopped as he stared at Adam in disbelief. Adam was slowly backing up, his face full of anxiety and slight fear. "What are you doing? Are you leaving?" John asked Adam. "I am fine with being an outer disciple," Adam stated in an uneven voice while backing up still. John quickly dashed forward and caught Adam's arm, causing him to jump slightly. "Didn't you proudly state that you're my first follower? How can I allow such a timid and scared cultivator to follow me? How about this, at least give the trial a shot. If the pain is too much to endure, then you can leave and I'll be satisfied that you gave it a shot," John said to Adam. Although John had just met Adam recently, he could tell that beneath his prideful exterior was a good person. He had taken a liking to Adam and wanted him to succeed alongside him. Adam, being his follower, also represented John, and he wouldn't allow his followers to be scared like this. Adam thought about it for a moment before he nodded his head in agreement. "Fine, I'll try it." John nodded his head in approval and dragged Adam back to their original spot. The elder in charge stood there for a while, allowing the various discussions to take place before he once again raised his hand, and the crowd silenced once more. "The building behind me is where the trial of pain will take place. Follow me if you wish to participate, otherwise stay here and wait for an elder to escort you to the sect." The elder turned around and began to walk towards the massive building behind them. Its ominous pitch-black color made many feel uneasy. The youths followed the elder, and John was surprised to see that several hundred youths had stayed behind, intent on skipping such a trial and instead become outer disciples. John shook his head in a disapproving manner and continued to follow the elder. A large door, 20 yards wide and tall, was at the base of the building. As the group approached, the door began to slowly part. The elder entered the doorway, and the group of thousands of youths followed closely behind. John and Adam entered as well, and quickly looked around the massive circular interior. Light formations all around the interior of the building lit the room up, making it easy to see inside. The black interior was completely hollow, and only a small pedestal existed at the center of the room several hundred yards away. A formation line encircled the central pedestal and had a radius of 150 yards. The elder turned to the group once more. This is the trial of pain. The goal is simple: reach the pedestal in the center of the room. If you do so, you pass the trial. There will be no fighting allowed. All those who wish to partake in this trial spread out around the edge of the building and wait for the trials to start. Do not cross the formation line until I say so. The youths all began to spread out around the room, making sure to avoid crossing the formation line as they did so. John started to move, but thought about something and turned to the elder in charge of the trial. Elder, you said there was no fighting allowed for this trial. Is that the only rule? John asked curiously. Along with the rules mentioned at the very start of the entrance exam, that is correct, the elder confirmed. Then, does this trial continue to affect those who collapse into unconsciousness? John asked another question. No, once one collapses, the trial ceases to affect them. However, an elder will come and escort them out if they do not regain consciousness after a certain amount of time, the elder replied. John thanked the elder and quickly returned to where Adam was standing. What was that about? Adam asked in a nervous tone, clearly anxious about the trial to start. Oh, nothing to worry about, John replied. His relaxed smile as he stared at Adam sent a shiver up Adam's spine, and a bad feeling began to wash over him. Chapter 157. Fearful youths' hushed murmurs immediately broke out throughout the crowd of several thousand youths. The faces of most of the youths paled slightly at the name of the trial, and many started to break down nervously. All the youths remaining were the elite youths of the Yuan Continent. Other than the four great sects, each of these youths came from powers that stood at the top of the Yuan Continent. Most of these youths were pampered their entire lives and enjoyed a life of luxury and pomp. They were given the best cultivation resources and were allowed to grow in a controlled environment. They rarely felt pain, and such a thing was almost unthinkable for their elevated lifestyles. However, the Heavenly Lightning sect was one of the four great sects, and they wouldn't allow pampered youths to become inner disciples. While most of the youths had looks of anxiousness or fear on their faces, some looked completely relaxed. Clearly, they had a rougher upbringing and were unafraid of a little bit of pain. John's head swiveled about, curious as to what reactions were going on in the crowd. He observed many of the anxious and fearful faces, and a few who were completely at calm. At the front of the crowd, the 5 most prominent youths stood once more. Mason, Russell, and June each had calm looks on their face, showing that they were unmoved by such a trial. Mee had a look of slight worry, as she detested feeling pain, while Hartley had a look of disgust on his face. Ugh, trial of pain. My magnificent golden robes are going to get dirty, aren't they? Hartley Randall scoffed, unhappy with the trial to come. The prince clearly placed great importance on his clean outward appearance. Next to him, Mee nodded her head timidly in agreement. Haha, what's there to worry about? It's just a bit of pain. If you can't handle that, you don't deserve to call yourself a cultivator, Russell shouted out enthusiastically. Clearly, he was looking forward to such a trial and had great confidence in doing well. John looked towards the 5 of them as they spoke up, before turning to Adam at his side. What do you think of this trial? John's words stopped as he stared at Adam in disbelief. Adam was slowly backing up, his face full of anxiety and slight fear. "What are you doing? Are you leaving?" John asked Adam. "I am fine with being an outer disciple," Adam stated in an uneven voice while backing up still. John quickly dashed forward and caught Adam's arm, causing him to jump slightly. "Didn't you proudly state that you're my first follower? How can I allow such a timid and scared cultivator to follow me? How about this? At least give the trial a shot. If the pain is too much to endure, then you can leave and I'll be satisfied that you gave it a shot," John said to Adam. Although John had just met Adam recently, he could tell that beneath his prideful exterior was a good person. He had taken a liking to Adam and wanted him to succeed alongside him. Adam, being his follower, also represented John, and he wouldn't allow his followers to be scared like this. Adam thought about it for a moment before he nodded his head in agreement. "Fine, I'll try it." John nodded his head in approval and dragged Adam back to their original spot. The elder in charge stood there for a while, allowing the various discussions to take place before he once again raised his hand, and the crowd silenced once more. "The building behind me is where the trial of pain will take place. Follow me if you wish to participate, otherwise stay here and wait for an elder to escort you to the sect." The elder turned around and began to walk towards the massive building behind them. Its ominous pitch-black color made many feel uneasy. The youths followed the elder, and John was surprised to see that several hundred youths had stayed behind, intent on skipping such a trial and instead become outer disciples. John shook his head in a disapproving manner and continued to follow the elder. A large door, 20 yards wide and tall, was at the base of the building. As the group approached, the door began to slowly part. The elder entered the doorway, and the group of thousands of youths followed closely behind. John and Adam entered as well and quickly looked around the massive circular interior. Light formations all around the interior of the building lit the room up, making it easy to see inside. The black interior was completely hollow, and only a small pedestal existed at the center of the room several hundred yards away. A formation line encircled the central pedestal and had a radius of 150 yards. The elder turned to the group once more. "This is the trial of pain. The goal is simple: reach the pedestal in the center of the room. If you do so, you pass the trial. There will be no fighting allowed. All those who wish to partake in this trial, spread out around the edge of the building and wait for the trials to start. Do not cross the formation line until I say so." The youths all began to spread out around the room, making sure to avoid crossing the formation line as they did so. John started to move, but thought about something and turned to the elder in charge of the trial. "Elder, you said there was no fighting allowed for this trial. Is that the only rule?" John asked curiously. "Along with the rules mentioned at the very start of the entrance exam, that is correct," the elder confirmed. "Then, does this trial continue to affect those who collapse into unconsciousness?" John asked another question. "No. Once one collapses, the trial ceases to affect them. However, an elder will come and escort them out if they do not regain consciousness after a certain amount of time," the elder replied. John thanked the elder and quickly returned to where Adam was standing. "What was that about?" Adam asked in a nervous tone, clearly anxious about the trial to start. "Oh, nothing to worry about," John replied. His relaxed smile as he stared at Adam sent a shiver up Adam's spine, and a bad feeling began to wash over him. Chapter 158, breezing through, John and Adam walked over to a relatively empty spot and stood there in silence as they waited for the trial to commence. Once everyone was in place, the elder spoke up once more. His voice filled the entire massive room, allowing everyone to hear him clearly. "This trial will remain open for 6 hours. If you have not passed the trial within 6 hours, you will be eliminated. The trial will become easier over time, but those who finish first will have higher rankings within the sect. You may proceed." The elder waved his hand towards the central pedestal, and it began to glow in an ominous darkness. All those in the room soon felt a dreadful power begin to emanate from the pedestal, sending a chill up their spine. Many of the youths dropped to their knees, unable to take a step forward and begin the trial. Haha. What's there to be afraid of? You all disgust me, Russell yelled out before leaping into the formation. The eyes of everyone in the room looked towards Russell as he entered the formation. His expression changed slightly as he entered, but he landed on his 2 feet and paused for a moment before starting to walk forward. His gritted teeth and slightly unstable steps revealed to everyone that even he was struggling slightly. His expression slowly became more unsightly as he continued to move forward, indicating that the trial became harder as one proceeded further into it. The elder did mention that the trial is the hardest at the beginning and eases over time, so it must be quite painful as of this moment. Soon after, June and Mason entered the trial as well, and began to proceed forward in a slow but steady manner. Mason had a calm and prideful look on his face, but everyone could see a tinge of pain lingering in his eyes. June had a completely relaxed expression as she proceeded forward, and had the most steady steps of anyone inside. That lighting cultivation of hers seems like it would be quite painful, so this trial should be relatively easy for her. Soon after, around half of the participants had entered the trial, with the other half still undecided. Those within all had looks of anguish on their faces, indicating the brutality of the trial. Many had collapsed as soon as they entered the trial, and an elder quickly escorted them away. "I think it's about time we enter," John stated to Adam, but received no reply. He quickly turned around and was unable to find Adam anywhere. His head swiveled left and right, and he quickly spotted Adam slowly but surely attempting to creep his way back to the entrance of the building. "Adam, what are you doing?" John yelled out. I've decided that I'm fine becoming an outer sect disciple," Adam replied in an uneven voice. John shook his head and started walking towards Adam. Adam's eyes widened slightly as he saw John approach and quickly turned to flee. "Oh no, you don't," John yelled, and he quickly unleashed his fastest movement to catch up to Adam. "Ugh." Adam screamed out as John rapidly appeared in front of him before he could react. He quickly grabbed his arm and began to drag Adam towards the formation line. "No, I give up. I'm fine with being an outer sect disciple," Adam yelled as he attempted to pull his arm from John's grip. However, he was completely shocked to find that he was unable to make John's grip budge slightly, despite being an entire minor realm higher in cultivation than John. Adam continued to plead for John to let go, but he refused to do so. His loud pleas entered the ears of all those who had yet to take the trial, and the elder in charge looked towards the two of them curiously. He couldn't be thinking of, the elder's thoughts trailed as he watched John forcefully drag Adam towards the start of the trial. Adam continued to struggle, but his pleas fell on deaf ears as John walked forward and entered the formation. Pain washed over his body, mind, and soul, but it was unable to make John flinch even slightly. Compared to the Lightning World trial and the Sinister Gate murmurs, this is not even worth noting. John had spent an entire month having his skin and muscles burned and ripped off in the Lightning World, and had endured many other painful moments in his cultivation journey. To him, this trial felt like a slight breeze. Adam was forcefully dragged into the trial, and his pleas quickly turned into cries of pain as he felt the formation wash over him. "Gah, let go, I give up. Gah, I'm dying, mercy." John ignored the pleas and continued to walk forward. "Think of this trial as a tempering trial for your willpower. Endure it as long as you can," John stated bluntly. "He'll forgive me eventually, especially when he becomes an inner sect disciple. Besides, the meek and afraid will never walk far on the cultivation path. This will hopefully be an eye-opener for him." John steadily walked forward, with Adam's arm in his tight grip. Adam's wails continued to ring out, and those nearby in the trial curiously looked over through pained eyes to see what was happening. Each of them opened their eyes wide in surprise as they saw a boy steadily walk forward, as if the formation didn't exist, dragging another boy behind him who was screaming the entire time. Adam's pained screams continued to ring out, and before long, he collapsed into unconsciousness, clearly unable to withstand the pain of the trial. Finally, some quiet. Although Adam had collapsed into unconsciousness, John could tell that he was unharmed, and the elder had confirmed his question earlier. Those nearby in the trial, as well as the elders watching the trial, all stared at John with various expressions on their face. John continued to steadily walk forward, unaffected by the trial. Although the trial increased the level of pain he was feeling as he proceeded forward, it was still unable to affect him. He continued to pass those who had entered before him, and before long, he caught up to those in the front who were halfway through the test. He easily passed by Mason, me, and Hartley, who were beginning to struggle with the trial. Mason grit his teeth as he watched John casually walk by and attempted to match John's pace, but quickly stopped as the pain that assaulted him nearly overwhelmed him. John soon reached Russell, who was in second place, and passed him with ease. Russell too attempted to match his pace, but was unable to do so. John's pace remained steady throughout the whole process, shocking all those watching. "What the hell? Does he even feel pain?" One youth grunted through gritted teeth as he watched John swiftly proceed through the trial. Soon after passing Russell, John caught up to June, who was in the front of the pack and only 30 yards from completion. However, the pain began to grow tremendously the closer one got to the pedestal, and even June began to slow down her pace to withstand the pain from the trial. John smiled towards June as he passed her, and continued to walk forward while dragging the unconscious Adam behind him. June narrowed her eyes as a curious expression appeared on her face. She watched in a disbelieving fashion as John walked as if there was no pain assaulting him, and easily reached the pedestal in the center of the room. By the end of the trial, John could feel the pain begin to have an effect on him, but it was still unable to hinder his steady progress. Compared to the Lightning World trial, even the most painful part of this trial of pain was far beneath what was required to affect him. It seems as if that Lightning World trial gifted me with more than just the egg. John's hand reached out and touched the pedestal, and both him and Adam disappeared from everyone's sight. Chapter 159. Passing the fourth trial, all those within the trial of pain stared at John's figure in disbelief. He disappeared from their view as soon as he touched the pedestal in the middle, along with the boy he was forcefully dragging behind him. Many wanted to comment on what had just happened, but the pain they were feeling within the trial made them unable to do so. Just enduring was already pushing them to their limits. Russell's eyes lit up slightly as he witnessed John's performance, clearly impressed with such a display. A dark expression appeared on Mason's face, but he said nothing and continued to slowly move forward within the trial. The trial continued for the next few hours, and more youths were failing by the minute. As soon as his hand touched the pedestal in the middle of the trial, John felt his body be pulled into a spatial channel and spit out almost immediately after. The pedestal itself was a transportation formation and transported all those who passed to the starting area of the next trial. John took a second to get his bearings after being transported. He looked around and found himself standing in an empty field. A single elder sat there in silence with his eyes closed, and the power fluctuating off him was far greater than Elder Ragger's. Heaven tribulation. The elder's eyes opened slightly in surprise as he noticed John's arrival. "You're here quite early, and you seem to be quite all right after the trial of pain. Interesting." John had arrived much earlier than the elder had expected, and also showed no signs of fatigue or lingering pain from the trial, and instead appeared completely at ease. The elder's eyes trailed downward and stared at the unconscious boy that was in John's grip. "What happened here?" the elder asked curiously. John looked down at Adam and noticed he was still unconscious. Drool was leaking out of his mouth, making him appear quite stupid. "He was too scared to join the trial of pain, so I gave him a little help," John responded, causing the elder to raise his eyebrows. "You dragged him through the entire trial." "Interesting," the elder stated, before closing his eyes and ignoring John once more. John looked around and found nothing else in the field, except the elder himself. I guess I'm supposed to wait here until the next trial starts. Might as well cultivate. John set Adam aside before sitting down in a meditative position. His mind linked with his palace realm, allowing him to fall into a meditative trance almost immediately. The elder noticed this and slowly opened his eyes once more to stare at John. He inspected John closely for some time, and a smile appeared on his face. Interesting. John sat there in silence and focused on his cultivation. Currently, he was studying the divine reaping scythe and trying to comprehend the second stage depicted on the page. His scythe comprehension was high enough to unleash the first attack, but John found that he was still lacking by quite a bit when it came to unleashing the second attack. This will take quite some time before I'm able to fully comprehend the second stage. And even if I do, I'm sure the chi requirement will be much greater than the first attack. I might have to be in the core formation stage to unleash the second attack. John wasn't depressed by this and was instead quite pleased. The higher the requirements to unleash the attack, the stronger it would be. It was currently his strongest attack, and so John wanted it to be as powerful as possible. Sometime later, a moaning sounded out behind John, and Adam slowly regained his consciousness. He looked around groggily for several seconds before his eyes landed on John's back. His face darkened as he hurriedly stood up and dashed straight towards John. "You bastard, what the hell was that for?" Adam shouted, rousing John from his tranquil meditation. John looked up towards Adam with a blank expression. "What was what for?" John feigned ignorance. "You know damn well. You dragged me through that trial and I passed out from the pain. And where are we even? Why are we the only ones here? Did we get disqualified?" Adam angrily asked. "Disqualified? No, we got here first," John replied in an unconcerned manner. Surprise appeared on Adam's face. "First? You came first." "Yep, and instead of yelling at me, you should be thanking me. If not for me, you would have been an outer sect disciple, but now you're an inner sect disciple. Aren't I such a great friend?" John replied in a magnanimous tone. Adam stared at John with an open mouth, unsure of how to reply. It was true that he did advance solely due to John's efforts, but the pain had been excruciating, and he was still quite upset about that. Adam was just about to reply when suddenly a sound appeared behind him. John and Adam turned around to see June suddenly appear before them. Her face was red, and she was gasping for breath. After several seconds, her face started to return to normal, and her breathing evened out. She looked around and spotted John and Adam. Her eyes lingered on John for a moment, before she walked to an empty area, sat down, and started to recuperate. Not long after June, Russell appeared. His eyes looked around and he quickly spotted John. He rapidly dashed forward and appeared directly in front of him. "Not bad, that was a damn manly display you put on there. Let's fight?" Chapter 160, The Fifth Trial. John stared at Russell, who had just appeared before him, and asked for a fight. A powerful aura was emanating from Russell, indicating that he was serious in his request. John looked at Russell for a moment before he looked away and returned to his cultivation. "Sure, but after the trials are over," John responded. A smile appeared on Russell's face as he heard John's response. "You better not back out when the time comes." Adam stared at John and Russell in surprise, especially John. John was just at the mid-chi condensation realm, while Russell was at the peak of the realm. "Why the hell would you accept such a fight? Your cultivation is way lower than his," Adam asked in a panicked tone. "It's just a fight. The worst thing that happens is I get beaten up," John replied in an unconcerned tone. Adam was shocked to hear such a response, as he himself avoided all confrontation unless he was assured victory. "Ha ha ha, that's exactly the attitude a man should have," Russell responded. John continued to cultivate in silence for the next 6 hours as more and more youths showed up. By the end of the 6 hours, just under 1,000 youths had passed the trial. There were several thousand youths that had passed as outer disciples, which showed the trial of pain had a high failure rate. More passed the trial than I expected, but the elder in charge did say the trial gets easier as time goes on. I wonder why they allowed such a discrepancy in difficulty. It didn't make much sense to John why the trial varied by so much. Although the elder did explain that there were rewards for finishing in the front of the pack, it would make sense to finish the trial later and conserve strength. John dismissed such needless thoughts and returned to cultivating. A short moment later, the lone elder in charge opened his eyes as he stared at the group of youths in front of him. Most of the youths sat in silence, recuperating from the harrowing trial they had just experienced. Silence, the elder stated, quieting the few discussions that were taking place amongst the youths. The youths all quieted down and stared at the elder. They were all curious as to what the last trial would be, as it would determine if they were to become core disciples or remain inner sect disciples. Congratulations on passing the trial of pain and becoming inner sect disciples. By doing so, you have all demonstrated to the sect that you are worthy of nurturing, and you will receive resources beyond your imagination. A proud look appeared on Adam's face, acting as if he deserved to be here. John looked at Adam and rolled his eyes and looked back towards the elder. Now, for the last trial to determine who of you becomes core disciples and who remains inner sect disciples. Eager eyes stared at the elder at the mention of the final trial. It was the dream of all the youths to become core disciples, and they would seize such an opportunity with all their strength. Core disciples represent the pride, the talent, and the resolve of the heavenly lightning sect. Only those who strive to achieve greatness in everything they do are fit to call themselves core disciples. The fifth and final trial has already been completed. The elder in charge of the trial of pain mentioned rewards for finishing in the front of the pack, and any cultivator worthy of a core discipleship would have seized any and all opportunities given to them. Those who would wait for the trial to become easier, or took too long to complete it, are unworthy of being called a core disciple. As such, those who finished in the top 10 are now all core disciples. Stunned silence descended on the group of youths before a clamorous uproar burst out. What the hell is that? How is that fair? We weren't even told of such a thing. That's bullshit. The elder listened to the youths explode in an uproar as if he had been expecting such a reaction. His aura suddenly flared outwards, and his powerful heavenly tribulation aura pressed down on all the youths, silencing them instantly. You are all now disciples of the heavenly lightning sect, and no longer pampered youths of your own powers. You best remember that, and proceed forward with poise and respect, the elder stated in a calm voice, causing all those who had been shouting to blush in embarrassment. Silence blanketed the group, until one youth raised his hand to speak up. The elder acknowledged him, and he stepped forward in a humble manner before speaking up. Elder, what you say is fair. However, I have one complaint regarding this ruling. The boy suddenly pointed towards Adam, who was standing there with a prideful look on his face. Everyone saw that boy be forcefully dragged to the end of the trial by that other boy. He wasn't able to pass the trial on his own strength, and I believe he should be disqualified. The boy who had just spoken had come 11th in the trial and felt robbed by such a ruling. The eyes of all turned to look at Adam and were disgusted at his prideful appearance, as if he had earned a core discipleship on his own merit. The elder in charge looked towards Adam as well and thought about it for a moment before responding. Such a decision is out of my hands and will be decided on momentarily. The boy was about to protest again, but the elder suddenly waved his hand. Formation lines began to glow on the ground beneath all the youths, and a powerful aura began to emanate from it. Before anyone could react, they felt themselves once again pulled into a spatial chenille and transported through space. The transportation lasted just a moment. John gathered his bearings and began to look around. His face, and the faces of all those in the trial, widened in surprise as they stared around. They had appeared in the great courtyard within the heavenly lightning sect, directly in front of the massive palace that existed at its center. Tens of thousands of people were gathered in the courtyard, surrounding the group of youths that had just arrived. John looked around in shock, and his eyes trailed upwards to the top of the stairs that led to the great palace. At the top of the stairs, Several familiar faces stared down at John and the group of youths.